Hi, my loves. This is your host, Karla, bringing stories of life experiences and of powerful lessons, also sharing healing methods and topics of the natural and supernatural. Remember, you are the medicine. Tú eres la medicina. Karla After Dark. Hi, guys. This is Karla After Dark. Hi, loves. Welcome to Karla After Dark. I want to thank you guys for following and supporting the podcast. I enjoy the fact that I get messages and how excited you guys are to look forward for the next episode. On this note, we bring spiritual experiences and spiritual beings having a human experience that come and share their stories of their life and how they were able to succeed on their healing path. And as today in this interview, we will be talking about childhood trauma, survival coping mechanisms, trauma bonds and toxic patterns, dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening and shadow work, inner child work of self-healing. This is an opportunity for all of us to learn and just do your own personal research. As for today, the opinions and express of views do not necessarily reflect or represent those of the host, which is me and my guests, and necessary to reflect, but as the views are merely opinions expressed. Other terms of this Karla After Dark podcast, it shouldn't be used in any legal capacity whatsoever. So as we share stories and medicinal methods or healing tools, I always recommend to do your own research, and we're just here to share our own personal experience of our life and what we witness in our own life with people that plays a role in our life growing up and going through some traumatic experiences, that we express our own reality, and everybody's experience are valid and in their own perspective to share their own opinion regarding their experience. For today, I want to disclaimer for my guest. His name is Shane, and I'm so excited to have him today. And do you consent this disclaimer, Shane?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. To continue with this interview and episode with Shane, I'm excited as I'm introducing him right now. We got to meet through mutual friends and our groups of self-healing circles of soul family, and we finally got to connect and share our own personal spiritual awakenings and self-healing methods. And I'm excited to have him today finally to share in this space in Grass Valley. Beautiful place that my brother John have to share for all of us. And thank you, John. I want to thank you from Karla After Dark podcast for allowing us to be in this space and have it on this episode with Shane. Shane, so how you doing, Shane?
I'm doing great. Another disclaimer, it's about 95 degrees in here right now.
So if you guys see me fanning or hear any, I'm dying. We're both dying.
I'm doing great. It's an honor to be on this podcast. Going back a few years, just to see the excitement of Ray, who's, my soul brother. I call him my primo. Just somebody that has really been such a instrumental person for the community and as well as for myself personally. Seeing his first interview and just watching that progression with him. And then also, one of my spiritual mentors, one of my great dear friends, and my favorite musician, Manu Anziani.
Yes, he's mine too.
All three parts we were eagerly anticipating. So it's a bit surreal, being here today with you to talk about, my journey, my spiritual growth, and, all of the things that you mentioned, from childhood trauma, early beginnings, through, my recent dark night of the soul that I'm barely coming out of the other side of. And it's been quite an experience, quite a ride. I'm honored. I'm grateful for all of it. And I'm excited to share.
Yes, thank you, Shane. And so your full name is Shane David Streets or Street?
Yeah. So that's a big story. So we're going to get into that. Yeah. So I was actually born Shane David Eckloff on January 23rd, 1978. And I was born to a single mother. In fact, on my birth certificate, under the father's name, it said, unknown or not disclosed. So, my earliest memories were of just being with my mommy, being her kid, and, just the way that she loved me. She was an incredible, loving mother. She spoiled me. But I do remember those days pretty vividly. And it's funny because what came after that love sort of prepared me for that journey into what basically amounts to survival, that no young child should have to go through. So she raised me until I was about, 3.5 years old. And, with trauma, it creates a memory, sort of a photographic memory, which has a duality, just like all things, right?
Yeah.
So I remember the good times, but I also remember the bad.
Absolutely.
So my mother, which I found out later, developed schizophrenia at an early age. And she did her best. She was a working mom, a single mom. I had a half brother, actually, at the time, and I think when I became about 1.5, it became too much for her to care for both of us, so she gave him up for adoption. I've never been able to find him, which, a piece of me is out there somewhere. But, she had the time and capacity to raise me, so when it all shifted, I started remembering things. There was a time when I was probably about 3.5, towards the end of her caring for me, that I woke up from a nap, and I was looking for my mom. It was light when I went to sleep, and then when it was dark when I woke up, and I was screaming for my mom. Hey, mom, I'm up. And I end up going down the hall. It's dark inside the apartment. I see a light at the end, which was a bathroom. And I get to the bathroom and I see my mother, and she's asleep on the toilet. And, I was screaming for her to wake up. Mommy, wake up. Mommy, wake up. Mommy, wake up. And I was hitting her. I was slapping her, and she wouldn't wake up. And, it was frightening. I was scared to death. And my early self, my child self, picked up the razor from the tub that she shaved her legs with, and I cut her arm, and that finally woke her up, and she looked with just absolute horror at what she had done to her baby. What I was able to figure out later is that my mother, because of her schizophrenia, she would drink heavily. She would drink just to basically numb out the voices in her head. There were some other, questionable memories. One time with her and her boyfriend, domestic violence. He ended up breaking her leg, and I was there to watch that, and, don't hurt my mommy type stuff. Yeah. But there was a lot of good memories. Like I said, there was a lot of love. She loved me so much. She would take me to, different places and, buy me toys and spoil me. And we used to spend a lot of time at my grandfather's house, who was recently remarried at the time. So I had sort of a step grandma, and I used to love going over there. They had a beautiful home in Redwood City. We would go to Marine World. There was Marine World was in Redwood City at that time. It was in the early 80s. And, when it all shifted, when it all changed, I used to go to daycare every day while my mom was working. And then one day she just didn't come to pick me up. And I remember staying the night with Eleanor was her name. And, it's okay, your mommy's coming tomorrow. And instead of my mom showing up, CPS shows up. They pick me up, and that was my, entry into the system.
Oh, wow.
Right, the foster care system. that was, pretty traumatic, right? I just wanted my mom. I ended up going to a shelter at first, and then started a roller coaster of just one home after another consecutively. Every month or so they would transfer me because I was I was traumatized.
Yeah, of course.
So as a young boy, I felt like if I would act wild, if I would throw tantrums, if I would soil myself, that they would just send me back.
Take you back to mama.
Right. So during that time, my grandfather, her dad and his new wife, they just allowed me sort of to go into the system. They were the only relatives that I knew of at the time. And, their explanation was, well, we don't want to be parents. We want to be grandparents, which, is nice for them to have a choice. I didn't really have one.
Unfortunately, yes.
Right, yeah. So eventually I landed in this home, which to all outward appearances seemed like, the perfect family, right? Big, beautiful 2-story house, new cars, vacation home in Tahoe. But behind those walls was a house of horrors. So, it was extremely abusive.
Wow.
Yeah. The father in that home wasn't just abusive towards me, but also his biological son and his wife, and everybody just lived in absolute fear. Fear. It could change at any moment. One day he's happy, one day, everything's good. The family's just all, joyous and doing wonderful things. And then the guy would just snap, and he would beat his wife, he would beat his kid, and he would beat me. A few of these beatings, nearly took my life. I was a tiny kid.
How he would beat you? Like, was it like his bare hands or?
Yeah, so it was a combination of different things. He did a lot of things that were like disciplinary, where he would make me stand in a corner for hours and hours. I mean, countless hours. And it was crazy because, I went to Marine Corps boot camp after I graduated high school, and standing at the POA, the position of attention, for hours and hours and hours, it was like I almost had training for that. But now I'm a man, and I could handle it. But as this young boy, I had to survive. I had to hang on. He would say horrible things about my mother,
wow.
that she was from another planet, she was an alien, she was loony, whatever he could say to torture me and tell me that she's never coming to get me. Nobody's coming to get me. You're
wow.
Yeah.
Psychological abuse, right?
Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, not just the physical,
well,
but emotional.
then came the physical. There was one time where I said something or I didn't do something, and he hit me over the head with a high chair, the top of a high chair. And back in those days, they were metal, and it was just all sharp edges underneath. So
wow.
cut open the top of my head that time. I bled pretty severely. They never, took me to the hospital or anything. The wife was a nurse, so she would always stitch me up. Another time, we were having dinner, and I wouldn't eat the fat on a steak. And he said, okay, well, you're not getting down until you eat it all, right? Typical from that time period. You don't get down from the table until you
eat it all.
Yeah, but he took it quite many steps further.
Wow.
So I didn't eat the steak. I wouldn't eat the fat. I just wouldn't do it. And he made me stand in the corner, for hours, right? Finally I get to go to bed. He said, okay, that's going to be waiting for you for breakfast. So I get down, everybody's having breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast and, pancakes or whatever. And there's my piece of fat. He says, you eat that and you could have breakfast like everybody else. And now it was more of a battle of wills. I wasn't going to eat that under any circumstances. And I remember this distinctively. It was just, I was planting my flag in the fact that I'm not going to eat this. Lunchtime rolls around, everybody's having sandwiches. There's my piece of fat. And at this point, he's realizing I'm not going to eat it under any circumstance. So he goes to the garage and he grabs a funnel that used to pour motor oil in. He goes to the blender, grabs the piece of fat, puts it in the blender,
oh my God.
Throws me on the countertop,
what?
Shoves the funnel in my mouth.
You're kidding me.
Pours the fat through the funnel, and I'm choking on this fat, and he's like shaking me like this, like swallow it, and I spit
Was
it.
his wife there?
She was there, yeah.
And the son?
She was abused.
She wasn't
going to step in and try to save me. And in fact, this gets a little crazier. So I spit it in his face, and he said, you little fucker, or whatever it was, and he throws me across the room, and I probably weighed 40 pounds, right? So
oh my god,
I flew across the room, and I wake up in a pool of blood, and the wife says, you should have just ate it. You should have just ate it.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So again, stitches me up, right? And so, like any abuser, they'll be abusive, and then they'll breadcrumb you. They'll give you some love. They'll spoil you, right? So
he will have those kind of patterns of like, he will be nice, and he will be, I don't know, caring, showing like he cared, and then all of a sudden he would just turn dark.
So you're always looking for that nice,
the approval, and the night. Yeah, absolutely.
You become people pleasing.
Yes.
You're just always,
and you're afraid, right? Because at this point you're in fear,
scared to death.
Oh God.
Scared to death. And I started having sort of, I wouldn't, visions, I guess you would say. I started seeing things at night because I would be up. I remember just vivid dreams as well, but I was always in a constant state of fear. After that incident, actually he bought me like Castle Grayskull and all the He-Man, and
no way.
Yeah, it took me to ice cream.
What?
Yeah. So, but the thing is I had a social worker coming in a few weeks. So the social worker basically, would have a scheduled meeting every, month or so. And he knew that if the social worker found out what had happened, he's done for. In fact, I actually found out that a child had died in his care previously. He had died of what was at that time called sudden infant death syndrome.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the forensics that we do today.
Exactly.
And I know exactly how he died.
I mean, there's so many possibilities, right?
Sure.
This poor child, going through such a psychological, traumatic abuse and emotional, and who knows the little body. Obviously we don't have the proof, but I can't even imagine. I think that's possible. There's so many possibilities with that poor little guy.
Yeah. So after that ordeal, I remember distinctly he got a Papa Smurf doll, and so he said, "Well, your social worker's coming, and this is what you're going to tell him when he comes."
So he was training you.
He was training me. Yeah, he's programming me, and he's it was something to the effect of, I was playing outside with my brother, and we were riding bikes, and I fell and I hit my head, right? Because at that time, I had this crazy bullhead haircut, 8 is enough, towhead white boy. I had the whitest hair, and I had a big old chunk missing, right, to where they had to like shave my head, and she actually stitched me up. The wife did it. Yeah, I still have a scar on the back of my head from that, in fact. So I'm sitting down in front of this Papa Smurf doll for like every night for 2 weeks, practicing for an hour so that I could perfect. Okay, what are you going to say when your social worker comes? I was playing in the backyard, and my brother pushed me. I fell down. I hit my head. Right?
Oh.
He's like, perfect. As soon as that social worker stepped in the door, I said, help me. He's hitting me. He's hurting me. Please help me. Get me out of here. The social worker fucking left me there.
No.
Yeah.
For how long you stayed there?
It was at least a few days. They were trying to find reassignment, and I think that he knew that the jig was up. So if anything happened to me at that point, he would be a prime suspect.
Yeah.
So they just ignored me like the plague. Like I was free. Like I was scared out of my mind. I thought at any moment he could kill me. I thought at any moment, I'm going to die. And in fact, one night, the first night that all that happened and I told and they left me there, was my first actual spiritual experience.
Really?
Yeah.
You had like what? A death experience?
Yeah. Beautiful
like
death.
out-of-body experience.
Beautiful, beautiful death. Yeah. I was so scared. I had more fear than I think a little boy or even a grown man can handle.
Yes.
And I just remember just completely dissolving and leaving my body. I remember sacred geometry. I remember being just taken by the universe and just told, by God, by source, creation itself, that everything's going to be okay. I got you.
Really?
Not in those exact words, right?
Yeah, but you understand it more
right.
now that you're an adult and you have your own personal experiences that you
it
have.
Goes deeper. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
At that age, how old were you again? Remind me.
So from the age of 3.5 until I was about 4.5, 4 3/4, closer to 5, I went through about 7 homes, and that was the 7th home.
That was the last home.
That was
one of the last
homes.
And then
so a few days later, the family that raised me from the age of 5 until I was 18, I graduated high school. Ray and Ruth Summers picked me up and took me to Palmwood Drive in Eastside San Jose as their new son.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, they did their best, right? At this level of like trauma that you have gone through.
Oh boy.
They didn't know that you came with all that emotional trauma and
Yeah.
psychological trauma and physical as well.
Yeah, in fact, I really put them through the ringer because I thought that,
they were going to do
the same thing. They were going to discard me just like everybody else had. And I would do little things like steal, right?
Yeah.
I think they had 2 biological daughters named Debbie and Judy, and my mother Ruth was actually a foster kid.
Wow.
So she was paying it forward, returning the favor, and her actual woman that raised her, Esther, was also a foster child, orphaned.
Beautiful. Yeah, she followed that path of helping kids that are in need of a home, a loving, safe home.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
God bless them.
Through that process of being with them, but how did you cope?
How did I cope?
Yeah,
wow.
Because that's huge when you're in survival as a child. Childhood trauma, it starts from the moment that obviously they removed you from your mom's home.
Yeah.
Or from her arms, and at this point now you're going through several levels of trauma.
Sure.
Right? And so now you're learning how to cope.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful question because now that I wasn't in danger for my life every single day from abuse, now I could finally breathe, right? And this little block, Palmwood Drive, it was magical at that time. We're talking like 1983, 1984. Every single family on the block knew each other.
Wow.
They were all very close. We used to play hide and seek at night. Just all the kids played together, and that's when I met my best friend, my my soulmate, my twin flame.
Aww.
Yeah, my dog from day one.
Oh, it's okay. So allow yourself to feel all these emotions. Part of the podcast.
I'm gonna cry a lot, but they're mostly tears of joy.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
This, because you're experiencing when we re-encounter timelines and go back, we feel it again, and our body it remembers, right?
It does.
At this level, you were coping so much, right? And obviously there was so much lack of things that you didn't know that you were lacking, even though you were given a home that was safe, shelter, you were fed, you had clothes, but
and I also I was able to have a stronger relationship with my mother again, and so I became the parent in that relationship. I knew that my mom was sick, but I loved her. Like I always had that worry about her. She didn't have to worry about me. I got me. The universe got me. So I was told, right?
Yeah.
But I was always concerned about is she okay? Is she safe? And she would show up, for every 2 weeks on the dot for a weekend visit, and she would take me to the mall and we'd go out to eat.
So they gave her permission. She had lost custody.
Yeah. Her disease got progressively worse over the years, through the meds that they poisoned us with, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So, after a while, then she would take the bus. I mean, she was committed, right? When she couldn't drive anymore, she would take the bus out to see me.
Oh my gosh.
And we would take the bus together and go to the mall. It was
so
beautiful. Yeah, it was a beautiful relationship. So yeah, getting back to Jaime, right? So he was my next door neighbor.
Yeah.
And the day I landed on the block, his mom Teresa tells him, "Hey, they have a new son. Go play with them." He's like, "New son? What is that? Like, who has a new son, right?"
A baby.
So he comes over and knocks on the door and tells my parents, "Hey, I heard you guys have a new son. Can he play?" and we were just instant, best friends since that point. He likes to tell a story where he actually fought somebody for my friendship.
Oh God.
Yeah. He taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And here we are, 41 years later, still going tough. And through this most recent episode, we pulled each other out of deep, dark shadows. And through this recent episode, he was my lifeline when I hit absolute rock bottom.
Oh, man.
So grateful.
I mean, it's so important to have good friendships, and that obviously he's been there. You guys probably have some moments where you guys disconnected for a little bit.
Yeah.
There was times where you guys were not so close, right?
Absolutely. So. That's a funny story too. So, his family ended up moving, to the more affluent part of the East Side, Evergreen, about 2 or 3 years later, and I moved deeper into the East Side.
White boy.
So we lost each other probably for about, I would say, 6 or 7 years. In that time you can't keep in touch. You have house phones and whatnot. And so it's a funny story. I used to sleep in chemistry class my freshman year. It was chemistry or biology, but I was sleeping in class. I was being a troublemaker, and the teacher would send me to the office. So instead of sleeping in class, I would have to spend time in the principal's office. And Jaime had just gotten kicked out of his previous high school for getting caught with marijuana. So he shows up into the room, and he's like, "Hey, is your name Shane? Do you have, a sister named Debbie and Judy?" And I'm looking at him. At that time, it's like if somebody asks who you are, you're like, okay, what do they want from me?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been riding ever since. Jaime was a skater, and
no way.
Yeah, and I think I was a raver at the time. I went through so many different phases. I was a tagger. I was just trying to find my lane, and skating was it. With him, and we got into all kinds of trouble and had all kinds of fun and memories together throughout high school and after.
You look back at this time, how do you feel that your preteens and teen times, like, how do you feel like you were coping then?
I really wasn't.
You were just kind of like existing.
Yeah. So I'm gonna rewind this a little bit.
Okay.
So there was bouts of childhood therapy. When I would get really bad. And have crazy meltdowns. And
you have episodes of anger.
Like that. Yeah. And it's funny because, my parents, Ray and Ruth, God bless them, they were old school. My dad worked a lot. He wasn't that kind of guy to say I love you, son, or to really spend extra time, getting to know me or working with me, because he comes from the era of you put a roof over your head, you're doing your job, and he was always kind of stressed out from work and long hours.
Being a provider.
Exactly. And there was always that sort of feeling, as a foster kid too, that, I'm not your real kid. You don't love me like you love your kids, right?
So you had that in your back of your head, thinking like he didn't love you.
Right.
Because he didn't show that.
Exactly.
To you, where he was just like, I'm paying the bills.
Yeah. And
I'm tired. I'm mentally exhausted. And their reality, they're probably stressed, about financial things, or either their partnership, who knows, right? Their reality is different.
Oh God. And understanding his wounds, his childhood wounds, he had a whole other set of issues,
yes,
leading up to that. And, when you get to a place where you feel like, okay, I've landed, I'm secure here. I'm in a marriage. I have a job to do. Now you just go into, focus, like, okay, here I am, I've arrived, and now I got to get to work.
Do you feel like that was a lot of influence, because obviously you weren't really necessarily raised by your biological dad, correct?
No. And this is a good.
So he was kind of like something that you kind of modeled a little bit, maybe like what it looks like to be a man, a provider? No?
Not really. Like, I turned to the streets,
I
found my comfort in, just finding myself, through, my day-to-day interactions of survival. Because once you stepped out those doorsteps, San Jose at that time was a fun place. There was a lot of hardworking middle-class people on the east side of San Jose, but it also had an undercurrent, in the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, it was like the PCP capital of the world.
Yeah.
And I lived on the block where there were like 7 houses that sold PCP. So on the first of the month, all of the people would get their welfare checks or whatever, their checks.
My gosh.
They would jump off bus 22, walk into my hood, and then walk out like zombies. I've seen the craziest shit happen on that substance, so I was always scared of drugs as a kid. Like I was like, I'll never touch it. I'll never do that. But yeah, it's quite a jog down memory lane.
Did you get to experience? I mean, go for it.
I'm sorry, you brought up my father.
Your dad.
So father wounds. We talk about father wounds. We talk about mother wounds. Obviously, I had a very strong mother wound. I had a father wound, not only with my foster dad, but I met my biological father. And the circumstances behind this are crazy, right? I had a social worker who was actually just dedicated to her job.
Wow.
The first one I had that actually took her job so seriously. She wanted to know who my father was. And I told her, I said, I don't know. Somehow, some way, she was able to get the name out of my mother.
Wow.
Yeah. And my mother, obviously had resentment because she raised me on her own. She never really wanted to give that information.
She was.
So this woman had the ability to break through that and let her know that it was in my benefit that I get to meet my father. Well, come to find out, my father was in prison. He was in San Quentin. This was his second term. He had served some time on a chain gang in Texas for manufacturing mescaline.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he went from Vietnam, right? He got out of Vietnam, saw some combat. His father before him was in World War II, and
veterans.
Everybody down the street, bloodline going back to the American Revolution, served in some form of war.
Yeah,
I served. Yeah, fortunately, not in war.
Yeah.
I have other things to heal from.
Yeah,
I didn't want to stack that on top.
Yeah. Good thing you didn't.
Yeah. She was able to get a hold of him in San Quentin, and at the time, as a hardened, member of a prison gang and also, a lifetime criminal, he had developed sort of a cushy spot in the hierarchy, and he had his wing where he was getting, conjugal visits. He had his TV. My grandma was sending him care packages every month.
He was living good.
He had cartons of cigarettes. Yeah. So, his wife at the time, which, she was sort of his ride or die, while he was locked up. She would smuggle drugs during conjugals through cigar tubes. I'll let you use your imagination for that.
Oh my God, the things you do.
Right. So he told her, he's like, hey, they're saying that I have a son. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's legit or not. He got my information and basically found out where I went to elementary school. So she drove down from Marin County to sort of case my elementary school to get a glimpse of me. And I guess I was doing the crossing guard that day or something. So she had a clear view.
You did crossing guard too?
Yeah. She came up to me and even asked me a question just to get a really close look and maybe cross the street. I probably crossed her across the street. And she goes back to my dad. She said, that is 100% unequivocally, no question, your son. I looked a lot like my father. In fact, I posted pictures of my grandfather and we're like twins. It's pretty wild. So as soon as he found out or got that confirmation from his wife, he said to my social worker, hey, this is my mom's number, my grandmother, Jane Blackman. Oof, hold on. My spirit guide. So
yeah.
So I got to meet my grandmother, which was freaking amazing. It was the most, God, it was so amazing because I felt that love, that familial love that I never got to experience as a kid. And I was the only son of an only son. She didn't know she had a grandson. Imagine, she's 70 years old and she finds out that she has a grandson for the first time. That's just like I found out I was having a grandmother. And we were just like this, and she spoiled the shit out of me. This was as I was going into junior high, right? So 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And now all of a sudden I went from, wearing, Reeboks and XJ900s to now I had the newest Nikes. I was fitted up, Guess jeans, Guess overalls, all Raiders parka, right? Looking fly. I think I got best dressed in 8th grade. Shit. Thank you, Grandma Jane. I love you. So now it comes time where my father is going to be getting released soon, and with me, being from these different neighborhoods and streets, I just was like, fuck him. I don't want to meet him. I don't want to know him. He's a loser. He's a criminal, right? And my grandmother told me, she said, well, that's my son, and you're his son. Whether we don't get to choose our parents, and I'm just hoping you could give him a chance, because I don't see how you and I could have a relationship if you can't have a relationship with your father. And I was like, what do you say to that? Yeah. So the day he got out, I'll never forget it. He gives me a hug and he says, I love you, son. I never heard that from a father before. Wow. Yeah. That's so healing. Yeah. And we developed just a very, very strong bond over the course of, probably the next 15 years. And on my daughter's, he had his issues. He had troubles after he got out with alcoholism, and he was a heroin addict. So he would try to get off with methadone and whatnot, but he would always kind of fall back. So finding the harsh truths of that, but he still managed to take really good care of my grandmother. And it was funny because she ended up getting bed sores. She was about 87 years old, and he couldn't care for her. He was really diseased. He had cirrhosis really bad, and she wasn't really watched over or cared for. And you have to pay really close attention to the elderly. They gotta have daily representation, and they gotta have somebody there at all times, especially when they're developing dementia. Yes. And he couldn't provide that level of care. So when she got admitted to the hospital, it was funny. Almost immediately, Creator said, "Okay, your job here is done. Thank you." And my father had a horrible accident on Christmas Day 2007. It was my daughter's first Christmas. And by the time I got to the hospital, he was on life support. And it was crazy because just 2 weeks prior, when my grandmother got admitted, he told me, "Hey son, if I ever end up on a breathing apparatus, or they're keeping me alive artificially, I want you to let me go and release me." And so boom, 2 weeks later, I was in the room with my dad. Christmas night, my daughter's first Christmas. It was supposed to be a joyous affair. And I'm transitioning him, not having the spiritual knowledge or the understanding of how big of an important job that is. I'm the only person in the room. And there's Christmas carols playing in the background. Have a holly jolly Christmas. It wasn't an ideal setting, but it was an honor to do that. And that was my dad. Yeah, rough life, good man. So a big part of me changing my last name to my ancestral name now at the age of 46 is to heal him, to heal his dad, to heal every man and woman behind that, right? Healing the lineage, right? Healing the lineage. And in light of recent events that have affected my life greatly, come to find out that I've never had an attachment to the name that I was given at birth. That wasn't even my mother's maiden name. That was a name from a previous marriage that she had. So it's not even... No, so I always hated it. I always never felt that connection to it. Everybody would ask me like, "Oh, where's that from?" And I knew where it was from, and I knew what it meant, but it wasn't mine. Yes. And now I feel like it, just in light of some of the things that I've told you, I feel like it carried sort of a curse with it. So I'm excited to go through this process and start this new chapter in my life with my ancestral last name.
Beautiful. Reminiscing a little bit of how your dad was like. So you guys had a really good connection at the end. We
did. Yeah. We would go to movies together. He knew that I was advanced as far as my knowledge of most things, legal and illegal. So, he never acted like, a traditional father figure. Mm-hmm. He would always speak real to me in very real terms. He gave me, complete history of his life, which I'm glad to have, and, to know what he came from, just how he kept it real. But we really enjoyed each other. I highly respected him. In fact, when he was sick and he was walking around on a cane, when my grandmother first got admitted, we were sitting in the waiting room, and there was a black gentleman, OG, you could just tell, right? He'd been to prison, right? Mm-hmm. And he was calling my dad OG, right? After my dad had passed away, he's like, oh, where's OG at? He's always checking on your grandma. So that was my father. He passed away. He's like, no, man. It's just beautiful, like that. My father was seen that way in his most frail state, just the way that he carried himself as a man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I mean, you feeling that you're healing a lot of the father wounds still?
Ooh, absolutely.
I mean, even though this is one of the things I always say, even though we have healthy relationships at some point with our parents, but there's timelines where we needed them the most and they weren't able to give us what we needed in those timelines of our childhood or preteens. So one of the things that you're healing right now in this present time, especially you mentioned your father, on the father wound, what has showed up?
Yeah, so a lot of things actually. It's been really beautiful, been doing a lot of inner child work. I think that was a big thing that you and I started talking about was shadow work and inner child work. Mm-hmm. Working in these shadows, working in finding these parts, these unhealed parts of ourselves, and really exploring that and going back to that timeline when you felt a certain way. Right. Absolutely. Because when you relive these memories, it triggers something in your CNS nervous system, and you could actually feel that. Right?
Yeah, so, you feel like you're reliving it again.
Exactly. So a lot of times when I would be an open book and I would share my traumas, I wasn't healing it. Right. Yeah. I wasn't actually healing it. I was more reliving it and further traumatizing myself by not having the tools.
And the awareness, right?
And the awareness to do it. So as far as a father, like I was my own father. And, like I said in the beginning, like I turned to the streets and I was just looking for protection, I guess, and to belong.
Acceptance and belonging.
So I would look for the toughest dudes in the neighborhoods and become their friends, right? Yeah. And I wasn't a threat. I was a skinny little white kid, right? So they felt almost like compelled to offer me that sort of protection. And one of these brothers, my good friend and brother for life, Paul Bocanegra, he kind of took me under his wing, and he was just the downest, craziest dude. Like, he was respected, feared, hated, all of that. And I would just roll with him everywhere and just commit crimes and get in fights and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And actually ended up getting jumped into a gang when I was 13.
You were
yeah. I know, it's crazy, right? Because he was like, hey, if you want to hang out with the hood, with the set, then you're gonna have to be a part of
the
this.
only white guy in the middle.
Yeah, and it was more of a tagging crew, but it was.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was very it was very criminally minded, and we did a lot of
How old were you then, you said?
I was 12, 13.
Wow.
Yeah. So he ended up graduating into like a more advanced sort of gang, and he ended up getting in some trouble and was involved in something where they basically railroaded him. He was in a car, and somebody ended up dying. He wasn't the actual person that pulled the trigger, but he ended up catching a life sentence at 17 years old. And
you guys lost connection during that process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was gone. He was a life sentence means you're never getting out. And it's funny because I would follow or look for him or try to find him.
Like stay connected with
him somehow, some way. But we were connected energetically because I thought about him. And I always kind of sent him love, always wondering, hopefully he's safe and he's doing well. Well, it turns out like this documentary randomly comes up when I Google his name one time, and I got to see that he was alive, but I could see that he was in a really difficult place. He was in the SHU at Pelican Bay, solitary confinement. He served 13 years without seeing a tree. And here we are surrounded by all these beautiful trees and this nature. So just, the way that the universe works, I was just like, God, please just, if I could just go and visit him, write him a letter. So I started preparing to write him a letter and just figure out how this is all going to go down. And he gets released.
Wow.
He gets released. And I was just like, oh my God, this is a miracle. Wow. So I reached out to him immediately through a mutual friend, and we've been like this ever since, just picked up right where we left off. Yeah. And he's changing the system on its head. He just ran for county commissioner in a close, tight race. He's looking to really flip the way that the prison pipeline for young offenders and kids that are of meager resources and minorities, and how they're railroaded in the system, and foster kids, that's a big cause for me personally. That's my dream is to eventually, start a healing retreat or, to do something in the benefit of foster kids to help them with their healing sooner than when I started.
Absolutely. Which later in life, right?
Correct.
When you get caught in a lot of webs of more trauma.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's beautiful for sharing your friendship about your friend. And just the fact that even though his dark night of his soul, he got to experience that, but also now he's,
thriving, absolutely thriving. Yeah. He was actually one of the first people that I invited to the medicine, and he accepted willingly.
Wow. So going back,
absolutely,
so going back on that, I mean, he how long ago this is like the big changes that you both reconnected, correct? And then he invited you.
I was the best man to his wedding. No, he didn't invite me. I invited him to the medicine.
You invited him.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then he actually gave me the honor of being the best man in his wedding, which was it was beautiful. So that's that track, right? Like I was like, okay, I got to change my life because I don't want to end up in the system like my father or like my brother,
True.
And so what I really started doing at about the age of 6th grade, I got involved in the sport of wrestling. And originally I did that so I could learn how to be a better fighter. Because at that time, by 6th grade, I'd already been in, countless fights.
Wow.
And I wanted to have an edge over any sort of rival, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In a one-on-one. And so I started wrestling. That's where I got my father figures. That's where I got my mentors. That's where I got my idols. That's where I got the best friends that I mean, to this day,
you're still friends with them.
Still friends, yeah. Shout out, Mario Solario, Gabe Arajo, Jason Palomino, Ernie, Chad, Reese. Oh gosh, the list goes on and on. Anybody I forgot, please forgive me. I love you guys.
Of course the acknowledgement is so beautiful, and that you guys still have
Dion Garza.
There you go.
I knew I forgot one. Darius Vasquez. Yeah, it's just
it keeps
so
going.
many,
it keeps
so
going,
many.
right?
Yeah, so many.
And your brothers, those are the most.
Yes.
God.
And now we're in this medicine life together. A few of them, and it's just like that transition from kids not knowing what you're doing, understanding the different paths and roads that you could take and where it leads you and where you can end up, and developing a certain skill set, but also a certain camaraderie, building discipline, building a work ethic, knowing that the harder that you work, the better you're gonna be, knowing that there's always somebody out there working harder than you, knowing that life isn't easy,
And it's learning how to navigate life, right?
That's right.
It's so challenging and
That's
so
right.
many levels.
It is.
But then it's more challenging when you don't have tools or healing methods when you're going through those challenges, right?
Absolutely. So
And,
through all of this,
yeah.
there was never any sort of help. There was never any really assistance. You know, I had to find that on my own, which was just basically avoidance. You know, I just needed to survive still, right? Be a badass where I could be.
And still coping, right?
And still coping, still getting into shit, still getting into fights, still, you know, having a hair trigger temper, a defense mechanism that if I felt threatened that I would, you know, I would strike first.
Yeah, and that's what ego is there for.
Correct.
When it was created, when we go through trauma in our childhood, so ego is kind of formed there.
Absolutely.
And it's there to protect you.
Yep.
And that's subconscious level. Yep. So, and that's the part where it gets a little tricky because then we're just triggered by anything or anything that we feel that we're going to be in that survival or being in such a defense that we will act sometimes out of character.
Always. That's
you know, and it's not like condoning bad character, but it's the fact that it's our coping mechanisms showing up to protect ourselves.
Yeah, it's the angry teenager, and
absolutely,
you know, that kid, you know, saw violence. He was violent. He had a very sharp tongue. You know, if anybody you know threatened him verbally or in a physical manner, you know, he was going to strike back harder, and you know, do whatever he could do to protect himself. And he's protecting the little one, right? The one that was abused.
Absolutely.
Right?
The teenager self.
There's so many parts.
And our grown-up body is protecting the younger self.
That's right.
So when you don't have that awareness, we're just thinking it's normal. That's who we are. That's part of me. It's who I am. And not knowing that's actually just our younger self, that we're emotionally stuck there.
Right.
On some levels. When we are in situations that remind us from our timelines and our childhood.
We're in danger. What do you do when you're in danger?
Exactly.
You react.
Yes.
You react.
And this can relate, and it goes in such a broad aspect. So like it goes into relations. It goes into our relationship with ourselves first and foremost. And the moment we disconnect from ourselves, we will not know how to handle external relationships.
Correct.
So the moment you learned to reconnect with yourself, divine source, you, now you have that healthy relationship that you're learning again, how to love yourself and be in that awareness.
Yeah, and that you are safe and you don't have to react.
Yes.
But when you don't have awareness around it, you know, you can act out of character, and then what does that do? It stacks guilt, shame on top. So you're just perpetuating a cycle.
Absolutely.
You dig yourself deeper and deeper into
and then
that pit.
And of course if we don't heal from those fragments of ourselves, then we will repeat those patterns.
Correct.
With different people and different timelines.
Absolutely.
So so you graduate from high school.
I graduated from high school in 1996, and my foster parents, Ray and Ruth, were going to retire, and they were packing up and heading to Utah. And so again, you know, at 18, I'm on my own, no safety net. I'm like, what the heck am I going to do? And so I decided that, you know, my only choice was to join the Marine Corps. You know, I'd been sleeping in class, so I didn't have any colleges lining up to take me, right? So, so I joined the Marine Corps, and all the training that I had in wrestling, all of the discipline that I had, all the toughness, you know, boot camp was a cakewalk. The Marines was great because I got to learn, you know, more self-dependence, you know, strong work ethic. And, you know, they had the GI Bill, so I was able to start really accelerating my college. So. Wow.
So from there, Marines, how do you feel about, I mean, being in childhood trauma, do you feel it helped or actually helped to traumatize you more?
I think
pros
it helped.
And cons,
yeah, I think it helped
to cope more.
Right, because I didn't know that I was traumatized. That's the thing.
And that's the thing, right?
I didn't know I was.
But as you look back,
and now that I know about trauma, right? Like, and I've been doing this work for a while. It's like, oh shoot, like this is okay. Wow, But I didn't see myself as traumatized, and I was closed off. I was tough. I was,
you were an ego.
Yeah, right. Yeah. In my mind, I was self-dependent. I was hardworking. These things still hadn't been resolved, so things continually come up. Yeah, I worked a full-time job during the day. I was in the gym. At night, I was I was in the Marine Corps, but I was a reservist, so I had weekend duties and 2 weeks a month, and just really living life on my own. In the beginning, it was difficult because I didn't have a lot of stability, right? And I think that just kind of goes back into my childhood. Eventually, I started to get to a place where I wanted to get out of San Jose. I felt like I was sort of trapped there, and I just wanted to kind of explore and see the world. I was in a relationship at the time, first sort of love, I guess, and we broke up, and it was like a perfect time to go to school in San Diego. So I lived down there for a few years. So I was still in the Marines. I went to junior college out there for about a year, and then I was able to transfer to San Diego State, and it was sort of a dream come true. Like, here I am,
absolutely.
Putting myself through college. It was a goal that I always set myself, but in that time frame, there's still that shadow. There's still things that are unhealed, creating problems in my life, and taking big risks that I shouldn't have been taking. As a Marine and in college, I was going out, getting drunk every weekend, doing drugs. And I actually got involved with some very, dangerous activities. Got involved with some narcotics trafficking. I was using crystal meth at the time. I was having, just unprotected sex with, just random women at all times, just trying to feed that need to feel.
Yeah, because you're so disconnected with yourself.
So disconnected, but at the same time, it's like, no, we're protecting ourselves. We have to continue this life. Like you've made it, or you're making it, but there was always that pull of the shadow.
Absolutely, yeah.
And especially with the narcotics trafficking, it was like that's recreating that unhealed father wound, and I was walking in those steps and those shadows, and it could have just completely thrown my life off course, but I always had divine protection, thank God, and I was always able to just stay ahead of destroying my life.
Do you recall how you got basically connected or got interested in being in that world? Because that's a different world.
Yeah.
Than most,
I can't really say. I can't really say a whole lot.
Yeah, and of course,
let's just say some very close friends from San Jose introduced me to their family, and it was they were wonderful people. People think that just because people are involved in certain things that they're bad people, but they're not.
No, they are normal, working class, you could say, but they're choosing to.
They're a product of their circumstances, just like everybody else, right? Yeah. People that go to prison aren't bad people. Kids that grow up in foster care and end up in the system, that's what they're programmed towards. If your family members are drug dealers, there's a good high potential that you're going to be
100%
right?
agree. Yes.
Somehow I was attracted to that lifestyle because of my history
and it's all subconscious, right?
It's all subconscious.
So even though as much you probably avoided it for a while, and then somehow it will come back, and you took the
So
the opportunity.
About 3 years into that duality, that lifestyle of doing good and doing bad at the same time, I get a phone call. It was that girlfriend that I had found my number. This was during house phones, right? And when I picked up the phone, and she's like, "Do you know who this is?" And I called her another girl's name. She hung up. She called back. She's like, "Okay, it's me." And we reconnected, and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening." I was so excited, and we refreshed. We picked up where we left off, and she ended up moving to San Diego. we had a good time out there. And, when I decided after finishing college, I was going to move back and move forward with this, I was really serious about her. So I got out of that lifestyle that I was mentioning before, so that I could pursue, a career, a future, buy a house, buy a ring, do all that good stuff. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And
start getting committed and serious.
Yeah. But not understanding, like, okay, what is it about this person that you're attracted to? Is it because they abandoned you and they came back and you're like, oh my God, I am worthy.
Yes, I'm chosen.
I am chosen after all. I am lovable, right?
And it's self-programming.
Right, exactly. So, that lasted about a year after I moved back to the Bay Area. And I had this crazy nightmare, this dream that like there was like a war that happened. We were at a carnival or something. This war breaks out and I'm trying to save her. And she looks at me and she's running, holding hands with another guy. So no. I'm like, wait, what is this? I started really understanding like intuition at that point, because then I wasn't suspecting anything, but then I was able to find out that she was actually seeing somebody else cheating. So I moved up, packed out that day, ended up going, Jaime picked me up and took me to his house, and that started a whole new whirlwind, right? Like a whole new level of chaos.
Bachelor,
yeah. So here I am.
You're heartbroken.
Another wound, right?
Stacking,
not healing, and then going into the party scene, the club life. Jaime's family at the time owned a bar. They owned a restaurant, the Blue Monkey, Chacho's, and we were just in the scene every single night. And just getting wasted, looking for women, doing drugs, that whole scene, right?
Absolutely.
Just lost, just hurting. And then and then I meet my daughter's mother. Now she was somebody that I had known pretty much my entire life. Like we were like 6th grade classmates. I had a little cute crush on her, but then she grew up a little faster and ended up getting pregnant in high school by an older guy, and she had a kid. So that was like never going to happen. I was friends with her brothers and I would hang out at the house, but it wasn't like I didn't see her that way anyways.
Yeah.
Get into the fast forward, whatever it was, 10 years or so. Here she is at this club and she likes me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And that was the beginning of just a completely crazy whirlwind relationship. Unhealed trauma attracts unhealed trauma. If you do not find a way to understand that, you attract where you're at, you bring in energies and you are attracted subconsciously, and these people are subconsciously attracted to you. You basically set the tone for the rest of your life.
100%.
And it's been my experience,
repetitively.
Yes, that there was a pattern there that I didn't see, I didn't have eyes on, and it's cost me a lot. I've learned a lot from it. I'm grateful for all of it, and I'm glad that I'm at this point now in my life where I can do something about it.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
And I could provide this help to others,
absolutely,
who might have blind spots.
Yes. Right. So the most beautiful part of it is like you're aware,
right,
and you're conscious about it. When we're not in a conscious level, we are functioning in, like, I've heard so many, correct me if I'm wrong, people, you guys are allowed to do that, but the studies say about 95% we are in the subconscious. So we're not even conscious half of the time. We're reacting our patterns, our programmings, and our behaviors. We think it's just who we are, and those are like the hard drives, right? So the hard drive is the subconscious. That's all the memories, all the patterns that we created through our coping mechanisms, and ego is protecting us through that process. And when we're not ready for relationships, we avoid intimacy, we avoid many things to actually commit ourselves to another person externally. And my belief is, in my own personal experience, Shane, is because I'm also afraid of my intimacy with myself because I'm disconnected. Because I actually don't even know myself, if that makes sense. So through this process of our healing, you're learning and unlearning.
Yeah.
And you have more and more awareness. This is not an overnight magical pill. This is practice. This is awareness that you're taking layers, and as things show up and flare up and they resurface, experiences that show up. And that's like the beautiful part of how our divine shows us that every time is an opportunity to do it differently.
Yeah.
And rewrite the story and not act upon the patterns of the subconscious that we are programmed. And so with you, it's so beautiful to see that the awareness, but also for you to recognize and you take ownership, which is a big thing when you're awakening and in your healing of yourself, that you take ownership. And not everybody is the evil person in the picture. And the experiences that we go through, they are the villains. And we are villains in many stories for other people. But when we are in the experience of someone has hurt us, that's the subconscious, right? So the subconscious is like, oh, how dare you? So I'm experiencing this again. But with your awareness, you're like, whoa, wait, this is an experience I've gone through before. And so now you pause and observe, like, why is this occurring again? Or why is it happening again? Yeah. So what does it comes to this? So it comes to like, I have to go inward. I have to do my homework. I have to go into my hard drive. I have to go into my inner self. And sometimes there's blockages. Sometimes I cannot see. Sometimes we can't see what it is that's creating this experience to repeat over again in this present time or in the timeline that you're living. And with that being said, you experience relationships that repetitively repeated. And that's because it comes back to our relations with our parents. And they started from the beginning of your beginnings. And then from there in the subconscious, you move forward, acting upon those experiences unconsciously. So now that you're so aware, but to kind of like pin that in, so you meet you meet your mom, the mom of your daughter, and then what happens from there, knowing that this person, obviously it was not to commit, or in that younger self, Shane, obviously was also being challenged with, your inner world.
Correct.
Like, conflict.
Yeah. So I realized, I had a high level of empathy, right? Like, I would accept things that, because I wanted somebody to understand that I'm not going to leave them because they have emotional issues, right? In this case. And, you get trapped in what's I now know as a trauma bond, right? Where you feel obligated, or you feel like you want this person to love you. And this goes a whole lot deeper than everything else, right? Like a lot of my wounds from childhood tied directly into sexuality. So if I had a connection with somebody sexually, then that means that they love me, right? Like forget about all the other things involved. Forget about all the other important stuff like communication and, respect and certain things, right? And also that was like, oh, well, it's passionate, that has to be love, right? Yeah. Going back to my mother and my father, the story is it goes two ways, right? There was my father's version, my mother's version. My father's version is he met her in a liquor aisle of a supermarket, and they went and had sex, and I was a product of a one-night stand.
Oh, wow.
My mother's version is that they were dating. I mean, she did have enough information to find him later in life, so it could go either way. But just the act of sex, right? It's a sacred act, and when you choose to have just sexual relations, just to have them, or you choose to put that at the forefront of the importance of a relationship, it's going to fail every single time, right? Yes. So that one failed pretty miserably, and I was again, scared, and not only because I was for myself, my sanity, my freedom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But also for my daughter. Like, I didn't want her to ever have to witness that level of toxicity. And so I wanted to protect her. So I left that relationship, and I really had nowhere to go. I was living in Sacramento. My job had moved up there. There was a big, mortgage crisis and economy failure, and my job was moving to Sac. And so I was like, if I want to have a job, I'm a father, I need to stay with this job, which I ended up working at for about 10 years. A really good friend, Lucian, owned the company, and I was sharing time between Sacramento and San Jose. So when I would have weekend visitations with my daughter in San Jose, I was staying with some other family members. Well, I call them family. They're like family to me. The Arajos, Yolanda and John, were gracious enough to open up their house, and she was like a grandmother. I was like her first grandbaby, and it was so nice. And we would always just have a wonderful time on the weekends with my baby. But there was always that thing, like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm about to go into something. There's a high conflict. We weren't seeing eye to eye on anything. And then, I meet my former partner, my ex-wife, who's now my ex. And from the beginning, like, I was, again, just not dealing with my trauma. Yeah. I'm getting out of this very highly toxic relationship. And all of a sudden, a few months later, this seemingly, perfect sort of woman appears in my life and is showing a very high interest in me. And I couldn't quite understand why. It was like, why would you want to be with somebody? She was warned that I was going through this toxic breakup. She was warned that, I had been promiscuous, and she knew like 5 different women that I had slept with during my party phases, right? Yeah. Like, my intuition was telling me, like, why does this woman want to be with you? And so I kept my distance. I tried not to jump into something again, because I was learning that I was not too good
in relationships,
at choosing partners, right? She almost seemed too good to be true. So, in my head, maybe I'm self-sabotaging. Maybe, I don't feel like I'm worthy of a good partner. And I was a single dad at the time, and she was a single mom. She was a widow, actually. As the story goes, or how she told it, her ex-husband had a lot of emotional issues, so he turned to alcohol and promiscuity. He was, according to her story again, he had a lot of infidelity, and I felt like, wow, I was scared to be left or cheated on. I had been cheated on in that previous relationship, so I was like, okay, at least I won't be cheated on. She's a great mom. Her kid's in private school, going through this hardship of being a widow, and I'm a single dad. So she showed a really major interest in my daughter. And, at that time, I was about to enter into a major custody battle with my ex, right? So it was like she just fell out of the sky. Like, what a blessing, this person. So after about a year of not even calling her my girlfriend, I committed to being in a relationship. I proposed in January of 2011. We bought a house in February of 2011, so things just moved fast, really fast after that. And then we got married in September of 2011. The first 3 years of that marriage were just wrought with high conflict custody battle. That's how we started, and it was great because, she knew how to play everything. Like, it's almost as if she could predict my ex's every single move. Like, she had seen this before. Come to find out why later, but if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have got custody. Now here we are living in this beautiful home, putting our daughters in the best schools. It just seemed like life was starting to finally slow down.
Slow down and look good for you.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, that's all on the surface, right? That surface level.
You were living the dream of the ego.
Yeah.
Because that's what obviously you felt like. Finally, I arrived.
Finally,
I have my home. I have a beautiful, perfect wife, and then it's just careers are blooming and good jobs, and it's like the American dream. Like this programming is just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But this is the same programming that many people around the world that think that this is the way to go when a lot of wounds are still there.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So this is a good lead into sort of my spiritual journey, right? Like as things started settling in my life, it just seemed like things were falling into place, and now I could start to explore my healing, right? I'm not understanding how deep those layers went, right? But figuring I'm in a safe space to start exploring this, which is where this I guess I always say this is sort of the beginning of my thought process and figuring the difference between the ego and the source embodied, the observer,
higher self,
the perceiver, the higher self, right? So it was May 2nd, 2011. We had our house for maybe a month and a half. My ex was still splitting time, wrapping up her former career in San Jose, and I was living in our new house. It was a huge house, beautiful house on this pristine neighborhood. It's 4,500 square feet. I mean, the house I grew up in was like 900 square feet. My closet was as big as my bedroom was growing up, right? So it was just like, the dream, right? So I'm sitting alone at home one day, and I was chain smoking. I was drinking like a 12 to 18 pack a day, just suppressing, right? Still just so much anxiety in my life.
It was a lot of worry about, do you recall that timeline at this moment? Like why were you using substances like as to kind of dissociate, right?
I had a high level of anxiety.
So you didn't know how to cope with your
anxiety? I
anxiety?
didn't know how to cope with my anxiety.
And self-soothe.
It was a physical feeling in my body at all times.
Dysregulated,
completely dysregulated from a whole lifetime of survival.
Yes.
Right? I programmed myself to need something to feel, right? Whether that be substances, whether that be sex, whether that be, whatever, vice. We
jump around with vices.
Tend to rely on. So I get a knock on my door, and it was May 2nd, 2011. I remember that date, not only because why that knock came, but it was the day that Osama bin Laden was taken out by Navy SEALs. That just happened.
It just kind of like all fell.
Yeah, right. So I get a knock on the door, and I open the door, and it's my next door neighbor, and it's Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. I didn't know that at the time. He's like, "Hey, I'm Miguel," and he's just the most, if you see him, in any of his appearances or, any podcast appearances, he's like that in real life.
Authentic.
There's a picture of him at the old house, like waving to the Google van. Like there's a picture of him standing outside waving to the Google van.
That's cool.
So not only that, like I grew up obviously in a all pretty much Mexican neighborhood, and as a Mexican gentleman in an all white neighborhood now, right? And I'm like, this is cool, right? So I'm like, yeah, man, come in. He's like, hey, I just want to invite you to my Cinco de Mayo party, which was happening, that next weekend or whatever. I'm like, hey, yeah, come in, man. Let's have a beer, right? So I think that one beer ended up being, an 18 pack or something. He probably drank 6. I probably drank the other 12. He actually just posted today that he's been sober for 8 years. I remember when he stopped drinking, which is, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But, we get into this conversation, and I tell him a lot of what I've told you tonight, just this and this and this and that. And, just like, I guess I was seeking external validation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, look at what I've been through and look where I'm at now.
Yes.
Right? Like, I needed him to see that
like,
I had struggled through all of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm in this beautiful neighborhood next to him. And he tells me sort of his history and you know, what lineage he had come from and who his father was. And I didn't really know much about any of it at that time.
That's
right?
so crazy. And they're the cause of my spiritual awakening as well.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I would love for you to meet them sometime. They're amazing people.
Yeah, if you're watching this. I would love to meet, obviously, the father. But yes, it's a big influential in our spiritual awakening for a lot of people that, I mean, you weren't even aware, right? How big
not even close
his dad is for many. And I'm sure for a lot of the millennials who were awakening during that time with the mastery of love and four agreements and the voice of knowledge.
All of them.
Wow. Thank you for those books.
Classics.
Thank you for the knowledge and the wisdom of the Toltecs.
Yeah, bangers.
Yes.
So getting into you know, our conversation, it was like, here I am pouring out my heart and my soul to this stranger that I just meet because I understand that he's in spirituality and he's, you know, it's like maybe he can see or tell me something profound. And he does, but I didn't take it the way that it should have been taken. And I'm just starting to understand what this means now. He said, "You are not your story."
He's 100% correct.
You are not your story. And my ego takes over. And I'm thinking, like, what do you mean I'm not my story? What do you mean? I did this. I went through this.
Couldn't comprehend it.
I made it. Like, what are you talking about? And I had to ponder that, right? And slowly over the years, peeling back the onion, think I'm getting there. And then it's like, nope. Still not there. So
there's layers.
You know, over the years, you know, that time of our lives was wonderful. We had other neighbors across the street. Brian and Lisa, wonderful people, and all of our kids sort of were about the same age, grew up together. You know, my daughter is best friends with Miguel's daughter to this day, even though they're living in San Diego. But, you know, we started kind of diving in more, going to, you know, power journeys in Teotihuacan with the family. You know, I went to quite a few. On one of them, actually, I think it was like 2013. There's a famous, well, not famous, but there's a clip that circulates quite a bit with Aubrey Marcus talking about the first time meeting Senior, you know, Don Miguel Senior. And he says, "I've never seen somebody just so in love with themselves in such peace." And, you know, he's holding his glass of red wine. And I remember that moment. I was standing right there. At that stage in my life, I was slowly coming into my understanding, but I still wanted to hold on. I was the guy drinking by the pool, right? Aubrey came up to me and he said, "So what's your story?" And I was guarded, and I had an opportunity there to kind of, you know, share with him and be in that zone, but I just wasn't ready, you know, to really explore the depths of my being, my soul, my awareness. You know, I still wanted to hang on to what I thought I was, if that makes sense. And what I thought I was all the pain, right? And what does that do? It attracts more
pain,
more and more. Yeah. So you know, that was the beginning. And, you know, throughout the years, you know, I felt like I was getting closer. You know, I'd have breakthroughs, and then I would fall back into old patterns. It was right before COVID, which was opportune time in 2019, when I had the calling to come to the medicine, and I discovered ayahuasca, and that sort of instilled in me, or hardwired in me, all of the teachings that I had been taking on, you know, through the Toltec wisdom, through my own journey into myself. But this just kind of like just opened so many channels. I was actually called through a friend who, you know, was going through a very challenging time. He was going through a divorce himself, and he was facing, you know, a federal indictment for some pretty serious charges. And we had two completely different journeys.
Oh, absolutely. You were living a different reality.
Yeah. So the medicine took me to the, I guess you could say, the Garden of Eden to start. You know, it's like Avatar.
Yes.
And all of the trees were talking to me, which I found out later. I have a strong connection to trees through a divination. But that moment that I felt so connected, I remember being in a sleeping bag and the sun is sort of setting and I feel the warmth and I felt like I was back in the womb. And then again, I start feeling that sort of safety, that geometry, that beautiful geometry, those colors. And it brought me back to my four and a half year old self who was abused and had this incredible journey connection with Source and Creator telling me everything's going to be okay. And she comes back and says, remember when I told you that everything was going to be okay?
Oh, wow. That's
yeah. And,
wow.
And I was like, yeah, I remember. She's like, okay, what are you going to do from this day forward? And I said, I don't know. I want to heal these childhood wounds. And she said, okay, you're healed.
Yeah.
It was sort of just magical. And I really felt like, oh, this was it. I did it. Yay. It wasn't even
not
even
knowing
close.
that you're just in the first layer.
Yeah. First layer. So there was also a time period and when I moved from San Jose to Sacramento, my mother was taken care of in sort of a halfway home. So I would come and see her. I would buy her, clothes and take her out to eat and just be as good of a son as I could based on her level of illness. It was challenging, but I made the sacrifice and I would come and visit her. Well, from the time I moved to Sacramento, she was institutionalized. So I knew her caseworker. We stayed in touch. I go through the custody battle, marriage, life, and, a couple of years had passed by. I was like, wow, I haven't talked to my mom. I haven't spoken to my mom.
Oh,
I try to find her in the system, and she just disappeared. I wasn't a contact, and there's HIPAA laws that they can't give out information, et cetera, and I couldn't find her. So it was driving me absolutely crazy, like not having that connection to my mother. So I asked the medicine, I said, please, can you just tell me if she's alive or dead? And the medicine told me, she's alive, but we're not here for her right now. And when it's time, it will be revealed to you. So I felt good about that. And then further, I was given sort of marching orders. And the medicine told me that I need you to bring everybody that you love to me, right? And I took that literally. And I started telling everybody about it. I was pretty excited, that I had this opportunity to help people. And then slowly, people started answering the call, starting with my friend Paul that I talked about earlier, my buddy Dion, who, we grew up through wrestling together. And I actually told Dion at a Tool concert on a Tuesday, and he was sitting in ceremony on Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's gone so far, and he just went to train with the Shipibo in Peru last year. And I'm excited to say that I'm answering that call in November. Going to be traveling with my brother John here. One of my spiritual mentors and close brother Jens is putting this trip together, and I get to go with Darius, this is his third venture back, and just watching his progression, watching him grow deeper into spirit.
Yeah. Darius,
I have such amazing mentors, such amazing, incredible spiritual warriors that are just all, marching together for a common purpose, and that's just, to heal the collective consciousness and to spread awareness.
So beautiful that just on the behalf of women, to see beautiful brothers go in and heal, and be able to be in that space of healing. And it's so humbling to see you guys.
It ain't easy.
It's not. This path
it's
is
not
not
the easy path. No, absolutely
not. You get
not.
to see your shadows. You get to see your darker fragments that have caused also to attract experiences that, bring trauma again to our experiences in the present time. And to see you guys to be in that space of men, as women, when we're around men who are healing, we feel safer. We feel seen. We feel that we're protected, So thank you guys for doing that for us, for the collective and for the women who are in the healing path as well.
And thank you to all the women. Yeah, I mean, it takes both, the divine feminine, divine masculine coming together, understanding that we are both, and just raising that collective frequency and that vibration to heal. We all need healing at some level. And if you choose to suppress it or avoid it, then that's just something that is going to catch up with you eventually or not.
Absolutely.
So during that year, more people started answering the call. That's when people like my brother Jaime and Ray and several others start coming to the medicine, and it's just I'm actively helping people heal their souls. I'm taking on this role of a channel, a conduit, a bridge, whatever you want to call it, a guide. And I'm just like, wow, I get to do this, not only for my brothers and sisters, but just for humanity in general. And then people start bringing their family members. They start bringing their wives. I brought mine. I brought her family members. I brought, just very special, important people. And that's when on the 1 year anniversary, I told Carlos hey, maybe you should invite your friend Madhu, because he used to send us YouTube clips of him and whatnot. And he was like, yeah, it's a plan. And Cain Velasquez shows up that time through my brother Gabriel Carrasco, who I knew when he was a little kid, and we were in the wrestling system together, in high school. And it just brought so many things together, and it was just so beautiful that time. And as if it couldn't get any better, almost to the 1 year anniversary of my first sit, I get a message on Instagram from a girl that I went to high school with. And she says like, hey, somebody came into my hospital room with your last name. And I said, you found my mom. And I just started crying. And that was the medicine, She was like, yeah. She said, I told her I went to high school with a boy with that last name. And my mom said, Shane. And I FaceTimed her that day.
Wow.
And at this point, COVID's in full effect. My mom was a former smoker. She got COVID, developed into, COPD. And I was like, as soon as I could come see you, I'm going to be there. But whenever my friend had a shift, she would, have her FaceTime with me. And then I was able to get in touch with her caseworker, which is great. So now I'm in regular contact with him as her condition is deteriorating over the course of about, 5 months. So by the time COVID restrictions were lifted, I go to see her, and she's fully being kept alive on life support. And I knew what my job was. I knew what my job was. I had already done this with my father, right? And I knew that Mama gave her back to me so that I could transcend her like I had my father. And I was prepared this time. And we went, I had to go to court. I had to, become her guardian. And I was helped by her caseworker. That took about 2 weeks, and they're just keeping her alive on life support. She has schizophrenia. I don't know what sort of torment she was in that state, being kept between two worlds. But I wanted her to go where I know where we go when we leave this plane, when we leave this physical body. So as soon as that came through, I was able to send her in a beautiful way, and I got her ashes, and I buried them ceremonially at the place where I asked for her back, with some of my closest brothers and sisters. And
Wow.
yeah,
Beautiful.
she's there to this day. And every ceremony, flowers are put there at the spot, and she's with
Wow.
me. I wear her ring. This is her sole worldly possession.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my commitment to this path, to this healing path, despite everything that I've been through, even recently,
Yeah.
I'm still just committed to helping others find their way to source, find their way to self internally, and connect in such a beautiful way. I want this for every foster kid, for every neglected kid, for every person in prison that's suffering because they never healed from their wounds. I'm so grateful that I have all of these wonderful brothers and sisters walking this path with me, and we're doing this together. And we all have the same mission, right? And it comes from a higher power. It comes from source. It comes from
Absolutely.
Our creator, and why we're here. We're here to help heal the planet, and bring people together. When we're living in a world of chaos right now,
consistently.
I mean, we don't have reception up here, but somehow we got a piece of news that's just wild, and everybody's just trying to tear their heads off each other, and there's so much hatred and so much war,
so
and
much separation.
kids are being brutalized and murdered, and it's just like, God, we're being inundated with that. And the counter of that is just love, to love one another, and to help people find it in themselves. When I say I'm a healer, I'm healing my wounds, which is helping the collective. I don't heal anybody. I'm healing myself, and the most healed version of me is going to be a more powerful guide, conduit, bridge, whatever. I don't really like titles, but it's
you rise the frequency of the collective.
It's
so
important.
That's one of the things that when we are in this healing path of self, and when Creator, Source, the divine reminds us who we are in this experience, reminding us that we are the light, we are love. And when we forget that, when we're in the human experience, we are challenged with so many opportunities, right? And we don't see them in opportunities. We see them like just some really fucked up situations.
Oh boy.
Like, why am I fucking here in this situation? What do I need to learn from, first of all? And so when ego cannot, let us see, it's when we have tools and we have healing methods and we have circles and we get together with soul family, soul tribe to remind us, because we are versions of each other. When we are in a healing frequency, we are mirroring each other. And so when we are mirroring on the frequency that we're in the lower density, we are attracting lower density wounded human beings in this human experience. So and one of the biggest things I know for you and for me and for many others that can relate with us is that we will always attract a version of ourselves where we are in the lower density. And in our wounds, obviously, it's the cause of our experiences of our childhood and being in trauma and not knowing how to regulate our nervous system and how to acknowledge the awareness, nobody taught us that. So when we're in that 95% of the subconscious, we will always attract, fragments of ourselves that are also wounded human beings. And then some of them can be also so dense in their energetic field that we are prey to some of them. And it's not to blame to the villains in the story. There are actually our heroes to help us become who we are in this present time.
Yeah.
Right? So we are unveiling everything that we couldn't see before. So now we see, now we're awakened. Now I know why I got attracted, or what those experiences were to show us more about what we needed to heal, right?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that leads me to my current situation, my current growth period, my dark night of the soul, which has been very, very, very dark at times, but also extremely rewarding.
Yes.
In a sense of I have finally gotten to the root cause of my pain. And like you said, energetically, we attract those, whether intentionally or not, from the frequency that we're vibrating at. So all of my traumas, all of my unhealed wounds, everything that I brought into what is now my former marriage, put me in a situation where I was not following my intuition to begin with. And
we betray ourselves a lot.
We betray ourselves, like not understanding why it didn't feel right. And getting to a place where I understand all of it now, and it's just like, whoa, it
all makes sense.
It all and it always does.
At the end.
It always does.
Not the moment. We just think it's a fucked up situation.
And some of them are very, very fucked up situations. Yeah, absolutely.
It's traumatic. Okay, Shane. So the story that you're about to share, or the experience that you lived. Share. Yeah, for sure. Open heart. This is a safe space for all of us that shared similar experiences of trauma, emotionally, psychologically, and the awareness that we can get through these experiences is to share information and do your own personal research. But with that being said, your personal experience, your truth, that you lived, right? Your reality, your own illusion that you had lived, which we all have lived many illusions, right? Because we created it through ego, subconsciously. So for you, it was an experience with a partner, of course, and discovering a lot of things that you didn't realize that you were in such a, what can you say? How can you describe it?
You said it perfectly, a complete illusion. A complete illusion. All of this growth that I had experienced in this marriage, I felt like we were, energetically connected. I felt like, yes, we had our problems like most marriages, but, I came to find out at the end that it was a complete and total fabrication and a lie. I never thought I would have to learn about a subject matter that is just so impossible to believe, but also to understand that it is in today's society sort of an epidemic. I would actually
an unconscious part,
unconscious part, an epidemic. I would even say that it's a leading cause of suicide. And
it's parasitic. It's a parasitic energetically, because I work energetically. So in the healing, I've shared this with you. When we are in the energy body, in our energy field, we will attract parasitic, energetic people that are, and this is all fragments. I mean, you can be in a workplace, in all different relations. We're involved with so many relationships: work, boss, kids, children, in-laws, parents. I mean, we see it consistently in media and even with music. So parasitic, energetic things that get latched into our energy fields because we are wounded in some form, and we will be in situations that unfortunately, we have to grow and experience through those things.
Yeah. So that's from a spiritual standpoint. And
Yes.
everything you say right there
Absolutely.
is 100% correct, because we are spirit, essentially, right? The other part of us is our mind, right? And this is where the psychology of it all comes into
And the
place.
psychic, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so the specific condition that I'm talking about is narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is very prevalent in today's society. We don't know how prevalent it is until you are pretty much a victim or a survivor of it. I refuse to be anybody's victim. Just based on everything that I had been through in my life, I realized that energetically I attracted this into my life before I began my healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I refused to look under the covers or the hood as I was going through this, and accepting less and not understanding why I felt like I wasn't getting ahead in my spiritual growth or in any other aspect of my life, you know. This all sort of began in the spring of last year. And, you know, just like we had gone on vacation, you know, things were, for probably the past year before that, like hit or miss. You know, we had good times, we had bad times, we had stresses. We were caring for her 91-year-old grandmother with dementia, which I felt was an honor because of my relationship with my grandmother. And, you know, it added an extra stress, and, you know, raising a teenager and all of that other, you know, it's just life.
It's life.
You know,
that's
jobs,
life.
etc. Right? So
It's
it's like, this is all going to work
routines.
itself out. We're not always going to be, you know, fully in love or whatever.
Yeah, you go up and down.
Up
it's
and
like
down.
yo-yo.
Exactly. But eventually you always
come back
to
together.
an understanding. You develop communication, and it seemed like our communication was getting progressively worse. In the late spring, early summer of last year, I started noticing what I found out to be gaslighting. And I'm like, hey, what is gaslighting? And I looked into it. I was like, what? Wait a minute. I've been experiencing this for a long time now.
You're like, since when?
Yeah. So I started,
my whole life.
Right. So I started, you know, energetically, my vibrational frequency was raising through my work in the medicine.
Yes.
And I started noticing things that just didn't feel right. It was just, there was like a disturbance in the force, I guess you would say, right? As my frequency was raising, I couldn't, you know, lower myself to those lower frequencies. And I started noticing things. I started noticing an uptick in fights that were being generated for no reason, and then accelerated, and then I would have a reaction, and then that reaction was used as a basis for, you know, you're abusive, you know. There's all of these different terms when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder. Specifically, you know, it is my not professional opinion, but my lived experience that my knowledge is of covert narcissism, malignant covert narcissism. I believe that, you know, energetically, I attracted somebody with a trauma experience that, as an empath, you know, I felt pain in my own ways. I was very self-destructive, openly, an open book, working through it. When it comes to narcissism personality disorder, it could be both genetically passed down, but also could stem from childhood trauma, where a false self is created. An image that you want to project to the world. This false self is usually perfect. So you mirror whoever you're having a relationship with, whether that be a friendship, whether that be, you know, romantic, whether that be with your children. And I've come to learn quite a bit about it. And this all came sort of to an head after February, after about 6 months of progressive trauma. So the stages of narcissistic abuse, psychological abuse in a narcissistic relationship, start with love bombing. I spoke of earlier how,
Yes.
this person wanted me and I couldn't understand why. I had all of this baggage. I had all of these problems until I understood why, that I was a perfect candidate for this type of energy vampire, I guess you would say, in a spiritual way.
In a spiritual
Sounds
way.
a little harsh. Again,
Yeah.
this is not a bashing session. This is educational. There are people out there who are experiencing this currently or have experienced it and can't quite put their mind around it. It's very psychologically damaging, and I want to be of support to those who have experienced this, or if you have a family member, I believe you.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that I believe you, and you are not alone.
Yep.
And, it's going to take some work, and I've put in a lot of work in this past year.
Yes.
So around the summertime, fights started accelerating. Another thing that they do is, they triangulate you. So they start, what's known as a smear campaign. They'll start dropping hints to friends and family members that, they're not happy, that, you're abusive or you're mentally unstable. Obviously, I've been doing a lot of work with these medicines. I've been helping a lot of people, actively working through my traumas as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's,
and we're not perfect because I sat with medicines many times and
Right.
I'm still doing the work. So, it's like when you a lot of people find Jesus, you're not going to be like perfect in one night. Same thing with the spiritual walk. You're healing. So we're spirit beings having a human experience.
Yes.
So we have trauma. So it's not like a magical pill. It's plant medicines, master plant medicines. Like I
Yes.
remember Madhu said that. It's like they're there just to help us navigate and how direct us to work on what we need to work on and when things show up, right? So
Correct.
for people to have those higher expectations of us or anybody else, nobody else like that are in this experience that, like, oh, why am I still going through these challenges? Like, because you're supposed to go through these challenges,
They accelerate.
Yeah, so you're now seeing it beyond the veil. So now your third eye, you can see more and more, and your frequency is higher and higher. You're like, hello, why is this happening to me? But it's because for the same reason, like now you're seeing further in, more transparent, more beyond the illusion.
So, coming to realize now after the fact, after I've figured out everything, and, I'll walk you through that whole timeline, but about 2 years before what is known as the discard, she started triangulating what's known as a flying monkey. A flying monkey is a supporter of this person who believes that you are abusive, that you are mentally unstable, and they feel as though they are coming to aid in a victim of abuse, which, in itself is tragic, because, there are real victims of abuse and people claiming abuse when they're not being abused and actually using their claims of abuse. It's very twisted.
It sounds twisted.
It's mind-bending.
It is mind-bending.
It really is. So I actually had a sister, a close sister that I considered somebody that was on the same path, spiritually, actually one of the first people I met in the medicine. And she had actually known my ex-wife from a previous timeline. They went to high school together. They were two different people, but people change.
Absolutely.
Right? So she knew her as one way, somebody who had a lot of difficulties with drugs and promiscuity in her earlier years, and that's the power of the medicine, is that it can heal you through all things if you do the work.
Nothing to be ashamed
and
of.
you allow it, right? So this person had moved away for a while, and then I found out that they had returned, and I just really hit it off with her and her partner at the time. And I thought, wow, this is great, that we're neighbors. Ray actually told me, hey, so-and-so it moved to your city. I'm like, oh my God, no way. This is great, because now I could bring them around my marriage, and it would be a positive influence.
Positive influence,
right?
Yeah.
So my ex wasn't really receptive to it at first. She would make comments from time to time, which is called devaluation. There's a devaluation stage. So it goes from love bombing, idolization, you're the best person in the world, to slowly becoming something more of, you can never add up to their expectation. You know, everything seems to be sort of a judgment, a concern, a criticism, which a lot of people would consider to be nagging, which, you know, it's just low energy.
It
right?
is. Yeah.
The way that you chew your food, the way that your posture is, the way that you dress, it could be any number of things, you know, that you're not doing X, Y, Z. So, you know, you go through that period and you don't understand that, you know, over the years through this campaign, like they have all the time in the world. Like it could be a slow process. And that's what this was. So, you know, she comes to me after hanging out with this person and she said, you know what, we really hit it off. I want to start working with her to get in contact, get in touch with my divine feminine, because I had told her, like, you know, hey, we're fighting more. You know, why don't you like work on X, Y, Z, right? Which isn't my place to say something, but as a husband, as a leader, I felt like this would be a good match.
Yeah, you're just conscious.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So come to find out, after everything's all said and done, she used that opportunity to triangulate this what she recruited as her flying monkey against me and still bring her around to my house. And this person knew of this plot unfolding. This is somebody that I held in a very high regard. This heartbreaking betrayal that I had to process through and, you know, energetically cut that cord and
not
you know,
taking it personal.
Again, like this is a teacher. This is even in spiritual communities, you know, we're not perfect, right?
Nope.
We got a lot to learn.
Absolutely.
Everybody comes from something. Right?
Different realities, different traumas.
Yeah.
But we all can resonate through our path of healing, right?
And what you also have to understand is a covert narcissist didn't become one overnight. Like I married one. That was who that person was from the beginning. That is who that person was from childhood. That's how that person learned how to protect themselves through the false self, the grandiose self of this perfect image, while secretly they're living a fantasy life and they have a lot of shame that they can't deal with. So if they ever have to face their true self, which is a reason why a lot of them don't get help, and a lot of this goes undiagnosed. You know, they live with this and it's not your fault, it's their fault, right? So
yeah, and I do hear this a lot common because, as you guys know, I am a hair artist and I do hair, and I get to hold space for many women, and this is on the side of the women, you know, because you're actually one of the first ones I ever heard of this, because it's more, I mean, I guess in my world, there's
men and there's women narcissists. There's no.
And so hearing this is like, wow, because I normally hear a lot that's the men, right? Yeah. And women will describe exactly what you say. And I just like, is it a common thing for men, like creating this, you know, for women as predators? And so healing from that, me, myself, healing to trust men again, but hearing you going through this process of women also having this problem and undiagnosed. And of course, this is a personal experience.
Absolutely.
And this is what you experience, and it's valid. It's your reality.
Absolutely.
And you're healing, and that's really what matters, that this experience is showing you a lot of you.
Yeah, and I had to dive into the lowest depths of hell to find this information. Yeah. You know, I was trauma bonded.
Deep work, right there.
Deep work, and it had to happen in order for me to get closure, because with a narcissist you don't ever get closure. It's you were abusive, and they get you to a place that you're so dysregulated. You know, I had cortisol levels that could kill an elephant. You know, I'd wake up in the middle of the night just soaking wet, trembling, not understanding what was wrong with me. Lost a lot of weight, but I just forced myself to show up for me every single day. I'm in the best shape of my life because of it, you know. Breath work, meditation, ayahuasca. I was able to really dive into my childhood wounds. I was able to forgive my original abuser, which led me to forgiving this abuse, you know. And
it's like the pattern, right?
Yeah, so, even going further, but not just forgiving, but thanking. Thank you. Yeah. And you know, like I said in the beginning, in the early years, there's a lot of things I couldn't have accomplished without this relationship, you know. But that person sort of knew that and felt that, you know, I was down here and this person was up here, right? So yeah, getting into it, not knowing that this smear campaign is happening, that people are being recruited, it intensifies, and it comes to a head in about late June of last year, when this fight starts out of nowhere, and I'm gaslit. I have, oh, by the way, for any of the things that I say today, there's documentation, there's text messages, there's financial records, there's credit cards, there's actual receipts, and hours of recordings that I had to acquire in order to get the truth. But
that's pretty intense. Yeah, that's pretty intense to face that.
Yeah.
Just to say a little bit of that. Just in the most humanness part of me, I feel that many who will bump into this episode can relate. And because, again, this is a personal self-finding, right? And you figured it out by you doing so much more healing, where it came to a point where you saw a lot of the dark fragments that created this illusion of this story, because it becomes a story, guys. It's no longer reality. It was a story lived, and now it's learned, and it's becoming, right? A self-healer, empowered.
You are not your story.
You're not your story. There
Right.
you go, Miguel. So thank you for bringing that prophecy.
Yeah. So she actually used my former friend as a way to drop the news on me that I was going into now what is known as the discard phase of the relationship with the covert narcissist. So during this phase, they completely just drop you. They drop their feelings for you. They drop any sort of compassion. Now, a narcissist, they could fake empathy. They could seem as very caring, very empathetic people, but they don't have the ability to empathize. They don't have the ability to self-reflect. They could feign self-reflection, right? They read a lot of books. They could hide and mask themselves in all sorts of different places, churches, spiritual communities.
I mean, this is like in levels that in all forms of communities, right? They
Correct.
blend, and you will never know.
Very well. Yeah. They're masters at their craft. And so she basically, I told this friend, like, hey, have you considered, as an energetic healer, a womb healing that my brother Jaime had suggested, because he had just heard about this through his combo mentors. And she was like, no, what is that? And, so we explained it to her. She's like, oh, okay, I'll look into it. So I guess they go into the womb healing. And I guess after the womb healing, she's like, hey, is it okay if we meet this friend? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So she basically, she was softening the blow because she knew what was coming after the blow, right? So she knew the blow was coming, basically. So she brings me in, we sit down, she's like, hey brother, a lot came up during that womb healing. It reminded her of a time before she had responsibilities, like when I knew her when she was like 19 years old. And I'm like, oh, I get that, but she has responsibilities now. She's a mom, a wife. We're taking care of her grandmother. We have jobs, we have responsibilities. It's like, no, I know, but you just have to be easy and just give this time and just kind of give her space to process through these emotions. And I'm a space holder,
Yeah.
I know what that means. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if you could use the people, use the terminology, use everything that I would be agreeable
and you were
with.
obviously a supporter.
Absolutely.
Supporter to and I'm sure that's what any partner wants, right? That the other person can come to their own realization of their healing and to be a better self, right?
Exactly.
Because if you're a better self, you're able to be.
And I as a partner, not that I need it, but gosh, how beautiful would that be that we're both on this healing path and we are working hard at becoming our higher selves, our better selves, right? And do that in partnership. That's beautiful. So later that night I get home and she's like, well, how did your meeting with so and so go? I said, it was tough. It was tough to hear the things that you've been dealing with, and I just want to let you know that I'm here to support you, et cetera, and whatever I can do. She's like, is it even worth it? Do you still, are you in love with me? And I was like, yeah, of course. And prompted, are you still in love with me? And she said, I don't know. I'm like, oh, wow. it just, boom, that's just the weight of that statement just killed me. And the first thing I ask, is it somebody else? Have you met somebody else? And her reaction was, boom, just a quick deflection, deny, attack, reverse offender. That's called DARVO. This is a common tactic they use. So deny, no, of course, I knew you would say that. Gosh, you've always thought that I was doing this. You know, they gaslight, manipulate.
I do hear that a lot.
Pros.
It's very common.
They're pros at that, yeah.
Now that you put it like in that. And I didn't even know it's DARVO, you said?
It's called DARVO.
Wow.
Yeah,
so I learned something.
It's a very specific technique.
But yeah, when my clients will say stories like that about their partners, that they do that.
Right. They want to make you seem crazy.
Yes.
And jealous.
And then you think you're the problem.
Absolutely. That's
what do I need to do to heal, or do I go to a therapist? What do I do, right? Because you want to save it.
Oh my gosh. So you just nailed it, right?
I mean, I hear that very frequent.
She said, no, I don't love myself. And I'm like, God, that's heartbreaking to hear.
Yeah.
Because we're on this path of self-love.
Yeah.
Right?
Now you feel like, how
can I be of service? How can I help you? You know, hey, I got these tools.
Absolutely.
I got all of this support system. Let me share this with you. Let me, you know, she's like, well, I'm fine working with this person that she's already sort of turned.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's very common. And again, back to like redirecting, when narcissistic people do that, it's a form of what? I mean, it's common. So it's to protect themselves for.
Yeah. So in the narcissistic discard, they always have a replacement to you. They have a new love interest. So she was definitely seeing somebody else. I believe this affair had started sometime before. Normally they have several different people that they're talking to in secret. You're married to them, but they're not married to you. They're married to the image, the false self, but they live a secret fantasy life.
Wow, that's deep.
And
that's like not, there's no awareness.
No, so it's a perfect cover because we look like the perfect family. And that's why I refuse to go through my social media and delete pictures and do all that like most people do. As a man, like you said, you've heard it from women, but you don't hear it a lot from men because men have what's called machismo, pride. Like, I can't let the world know that this happened to me.
Yeah.
But there's men who are...
they're suffering.
They're suffering in silence. Like I said, you know, suicide awareness is huge. We just got through...
I'm big on mental health awareness for men, because just for the simple fact, I also hear women who are wives and have husbands that suffer of, you know, of mental health, and also because they suppress so much and they have so much childhood trauma, and they don't know how to help them.
And shame,
you know, there's so much shame, and they don't want to talk about it with their wives, but the wives can see it. Like, there's so much shame in them.
Right. So, you know, that whole started. That's called the discard, right? What's known as the other person in her life. It probably started getting more serious, and they had plans to start the relationship. To him, she's probably bashing me, just saying that she's married to this crazy guy, she's getting a divorce, etc. If at that point she had just said, yes, it was somebody else, I don't love you anymore, I could have started my healing process then. But what they do is they want to sort of torture you. They want to create this trauma bond that you're just like, please, you know, let's work on us.
Do you think it's a place, like a form of safety for them in case it doesn't work out with other people, that there are...
That's a possibility, but I think maintaining this false self, maintaining this grandiose self of the perfect person, they can't accept any blame either. You know what I mean? So what they want to do is get you to a place where you're reacting, you're reactive. You know, I figured out a lot of these things through therapy, lots of therapy. Yeah. I joined a men's group called Beyond Driven through Tim Arrigo. I post a lot of his stuff. Man, that guy speaks through my soul, and it saved my life. I actually joined this program at the final stages of the discard to save my marriage, but it ended up saving me and giving me the ability to rebuild my strength, myself, my mental capacity, my connection to spirit.
And the tenacity.
Oh, God. Yeah, when that guy talks, it's just...
Oh, God. He gives me the chills.
Yeah.
Tim, hopefully you watch us.
Yeah, Brother Tim.
Can you be my next guest?
Oh, boy. Calling it in.
Yes, I'm calling into the universe, Tim.
Yeah.
Your sister's calling you.
Yeah. And there's a slew of others, like I said, I had an army behind me helping me through this. And let me just take this time to recognize, Madhu Anziani.
Hi, Madhu.
He put me through, subconscious programming, hypnotherapy.
Yes.
My brother Jens Jarvie, and this whole process after this discard occurred. I went into my first ceremony after, and it was with Jens, and I got to meet Jens for the first time. Darius has been mentoring under him for a long time. He's like, bro, you got to sit with Jens. So what perfect timing that this crazy life event happens, that I start my process of acceptance, healing, growth. And she told me she wanted to fight for the marriage, and I was going to fight for myself. I was going to fight. Okay, you're working on yourself, I'm working on myself. Me working on myself involved serious, deep work. Her working on herself, from my view, was getting hair extensions, getting Botox, getting bikini laser, getting a new wardrobe, working out every single day. And that's not to bash, but that was external. I was working on the internal, right? So getting to
very common for women that don't have the right direction, right?
Correct.
That unfortunately you go to the beauty to fulfill some external
it's a it's a need, it's a desire to be wanted, to be somebody's.
Very common, actually. It's very common in social media, and just because it's common for men too. I mean, it's out there. It's out there. I see it. Fitness world, it's getting ridiculous. They think of success and cars, but it's also the same thing. It attacks women, like they think that this external beauty is going to fulfill what's completely lacking inside.
It's funny that you say that. So two things come up with that when you just mentioned that, because a lot of things came up after I found out what narcissistic personality disorder and malignant covert narcissism was. I started going back on the timeline all the way through our marriage. And I was like, oh my God, like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And it all just fell into that checklist. Not everybody who cheats is a narcissist. Not everybody who lies is a narcissist. Not everybody who manipulates is a narcissist. Not everybody.
I was a manipulator, guys. So but I think that's survival mechanisms.
Correct.
Survival mechanisms will create that when you're a child, when you don't know how to self-soothe. And so you create manipulation to get what you want to get.
Correct.
So I agree with you.
So, but all of these things.
Deep layers there.
Yeah, all of these things coming together and following a specific pattern, male or female, they all follow this pattern. I've done so much research on this, and I'm just blown away that, like, energetically, right, we're all called to a singular source, and we're all on this path of work and bringing unity together. It seems like they are called to a lower vibrational frequency that's meant to exploit. And like I said, great teachers, right? Like, this is going to energetically make me
well, as a shadow worker, I use the shadow to help me bring more brighter of my light, because it's gonna bring more light into the darkness. So it's gonna show me more things that I have to let go. Right?
Correct. So as time goes on, month to month, there's things like, she would, hey, let's have a date night. Oh, that sounds amazing. So we'd have a date night. So this is called breadcrumbing. So in the background, she's telling everybody that we're done, that it's over, that, I need to get out of this marriage. He's abusive, he's mentally unstable, etc. But to me, she's like, I want to make this work. I want, to be a family. I want to fight for our family. Right. So it's creating this confusion, but I could feel the energy when I would go around her friend groups, because she would still parade me around her friend groups. In fact, we went to a wedding in August for her best friend's brother, and the next day she left to a silent retreat where no cell phones. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And then after that, it turned to, I've been called to travel more for work. I got to now do these regional shows. And so then a regional show was happening like clockwork every 3 weeks to a month. Right.
You never question, of course.
Never question it. And she's such a meticulous planner. That's what she does. Like, there was so much work and effort put into the deception. And I found out all this after, like, I made that disclaimer. I got actual evidence of all of this that I say.
Yes.
Around October, she had to go to a regional show. And she returns, and I have a friends gathering with my friends from my hometown, people that I grew up with, and who she became very close with over the years, because these are my people, you know.
Yeah.
And we're a couple, and these are your people too, right? Just like with her friends, but she didn't have immediate access to them. So she went to this party, cornered one of my best friend's wives, and said, "Girl, I'm not happy," and you know, started saying all of this stuff, which was completely out of character for her. My friend came into the mix, and she starts telling him, "Well, you need to start treating her better, because you know, we don't stick around forever if we don't feel blah blah blah." So it was just like,
so like red flags.
Red flags.
Yeah.
So my friend, his wife, told him that night, like, "I think she's seen somebody else." Like, that was the energy she picked up. And he was like, "No way. If you knew this person, there's no possible way." I didn't think she was capable of telling a lie, much less cheating. Like, that was crazy, especially all the stories about how her ex was infidelity and all of this. It's like that was never in my mind. That
So that's one of the things that people, if they look into covert narcissists, like, they will have those traits, creating
absolutely
for
the illusion. The illusion. So, you know, that's October going into November. We're still, you know, going to gatherings, going to Thanksgiving as a family. And, you know, I'm thinking we're working on ourselves and working possibly at restoring the marriage, but it starts pulling apart. In September of that year, I wanted a second opinion. She brought so-and-so to the house so that we could all meet, the three of us. And that's when, you know, so-and-so dropped, like, "Well, she doesn't want to be intimate anymore. How do you feel about that?" Okay, I don't feel good about it. Like, and then I started realizing, oh shit, like this is a plot that's sort of unfolding. So I, through Madhu, was given a recommendation of a beautiful, beautiful soul. I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning her name, Nadine Keller. She's, you know, on the psychology standpoint, she had, you know, 30 years experience in couples counseling, her marriage, and just her example and all of her writings and all of her spiritual leanings.
She sounds amazing. So we might just put her link.
Yeah, she's amazing. And
yeah,
you know, so I said, I want a second opinion, and I want somebody who actually has experience in these matters. You know, not somebody who's a few years into the medicine and possibly, you know, never had a healthy relationship to be, you know, dealing with mine. I didn't call that in. You're supposed to work on yourself in a energetic way. And, you know, here now we have this third party that you're relying heavily on for all of your advice and all of, you know, and sort of the triangulation. She was turning us against each other because I was getting, you know, upset that this was happening. So I called in this beautiful soul, and, you know, she starts meeting with us. So I started noticing a pattern. She's using this person's advice and not taking the advice that doesn't fit. And, you know, this person would drop subtle hints. Like, I would say something like, "Well, I know she would never cheat on me." And she would be like, "Well, don't ever use absolutes. Don't say never." Right?
Wow.
And that was changing sort of like my thought process. Like, wait a minute, no. And I'm just in this complete state of trauma bond, complete state of cognitive dissonance, complete state of confusion. And that's what they want to keep that confusion alive, so that so getting back to June, I just started a new job, or I just got an offer for a startup company. And I was excited. It was a great opportunity, great role.
Absolutely, yeah.
So right at this time is when all of this stuff starts happening. So I can't think, I can't concentrate. I'm a sales guy. I can't get a deal closed.
You're
traveling a lot. Yeah, traveling. So it requires so much travel.
So you're just going full force with this new career.
Correct. Yeah. So, you know, there's so many little things that happen, but as we're getting towards the end of the year, Christmas time, we spend Christmas as a family. You know, we invite her family over, and it's you know, hey, you know, let's go on a date night. Let's go to dinner as a family. And then it's like, you know, treat me like garbage. You know, just cruelty, a level of abject cruelty that I never experienced before, because this is somebody that I relied to on love. The trauma bond is set, And now I am just looking for any little piece of anything I could get
Of
out of the
love,
situation.
to feel
Right.
like-
So she recommends at the end of the year that we go to Teo, you know, and we've been there so many times, you know, we were so just bonded with the family. We were all just very, very close together. So come to find out, you know, I was used as a prop on that trip. You know, she wanted to keep up the appearance that we were
good,
good, or, you know, and keep up that appearance to me, like we're actually going to be moving forward, or at least this is a starting point for that.
And we'll be okay.
Right. So, you know, 3 days later, I later found receipts that she had bought lingerie for a regional show.
Yeah.
And previously she had bought lingerie several other times for each regional show.
So very common of like
yeah,
of creating a different story of her reality, right?
Right.
So she has your reality and her other reality.
Exactly.
So double lives. Very
Double life.
common. I mean, I hear this all the time, like I said, with my clients with different realities, you know. In some case, I'll just briefly say, like, one of my clients' partners, like, he will fly all the way to Colombia and call it a business trip with their brother and looking at things out there, and next thing you know, like, got a girl pregnant, but it wasn't their baby. Long story short, it's like a story of like Lifetime movie. Correct. And with that being said, that's why I'm like, this is very common, guys. This is all educational purposes for your own research of your this experience that Shane went through, and of course you are healing through this process of this, and that's like
every day.
Our family are so fun. Like, we commend you. We love you so much through this process of your healing.
Thank
because
you.
It's not just helping yourself, but it's helping all of us that it's gone through such traumatic emotions similar to your experience. I never thought I would hear this story from a man, to be honest. It's because I hear it so much from women. So like the more you talk about it, I'm like, I hear this always behind the chair.
Right.
And to hear it, and for the men out there who might be going through this, like, please reach out to Shane. Like, he's an amazing guy. He's healing, self-awareness to the full. And I'm, you know, your mentors that you have, you know.
So
seriously
grateful. So grateful. Thank all of you.
Yeah.
Dr. Barney Jordan, I haven't given him a shout out. Maybe I have, but I've been working with him recently, so he comes to mind, and just really learning the depths of internal family systems. He trained directly under Dick Schwartz, who's like the godfather of IFS, and Madhu is actually the first person to mention IFS to me, so that all came full circle. Lloyden and Dion Garza, thank you so much for all of your support through ceremony and otherwise, you know, just on a day-to-day basis. Lloyden has struggled through so much in life, and you know, when I hit my lowest rock bottom, you know, she recommended and actually paid for my first initial visits with Dr. Jordan. So
oh wow, so
thank
amazing.
you.
Amazing soul family.
So getting back to the timeline,
let's get back
to the
timelines.
Let's get back to the novella.
Continues.
So you know, mid-January, I was in danger of being laid off from my new position at this startup because of a lack of performance, and they had every right to lay me off because I was not in my own mind, my own body. I was trauma bonded. I was reactive, dysregulated to the max. Later I found out through Tim Marigo, you know, that my amygdala was constantly being hijacked. It had been swollen. My hippocampus had shrunk. I was completely out of my prefrontal cortex where awareness lies.
You weren't even breathing properly.
I wasn't, no. And I was doing breath work every single day, you know, let me tell you. Right? Sauna, cold plunge, running, like nothing was working. And but it all was too at the same time, you know.
Like you couldn't see it at the moment, I think.
Right.
But you were showing up for you.
I was showing up for me every single day. So
that's what matters.
So this is all sort of like Pulp Fiction-y because like I'm jumping back on timelines, so please keep up. But you know, mid-January, I was in danger of being laid off. And so I started looking at our finances. And I noticed that a credit card had been run up like 20 grand. And so I asked about it. I said, hey, you know, did you know about this? And she's like, that's got to be a mistake. But I'm busy now. I can't look into it. So I'm like, okay, I'll log in. So I go and log in, and I'm not on the card anymore. So like, hey, I couldn't log in. Did you take me off the card? No. I don't know. Just I'm busy. And then it turned into, oh, you know what that was? We actually paid for our daughter's semester of school, but she's getting this grant money, and that's going to be used to pay that off. So don't even worry about it. And then I didn't even question that. I was like, okay, that makes sense. We've done that before.
Yeah.
Or did we?
Right. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Right. So, it questions everything at that point, right?
Jeez, I'm questioning it.
So she volunteered a third story, which was that she accidentally used her personal credit card for work purposes, and that she caught that, and now the work's going to reimburse her. So it's a dead deal. And I'm like, bullshit, and for the first time I thought, wow, this person lied to me. In 13, 12, 14 years, I didn't think this person was capable of telling a lie. First of all, infidelity, no freaking way, right? Like, absolutely not. This person's image that they upheld for so long, nobody could have guessed it. So then I'm like, we got something here. We got a situation. There's smoke. I need to dig deeper. I was in therapy at the time. Now, with the narcissist, everybody around them ends up in therapy except for themselves. They don't have the ability to self-reflect. If they do end up in therapy, it's to get better at their craft, or to convince the therapist that they're not the problem, right? Wow. So it's a very delicate, yeah.
This is, wow.
So my therapist, after going through this series of events, I think she's having an affair. I found this, the financial impropriety, the hair extensions, the tanning, the Botox. She's like, well, if she isn't already having an affair, she's planning to. How does that make you feel? I said,
oh, wow.
Like,
your therapist said this?
Yeah.
Who's this therapist?
And I can't mention her by name.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, but just reach out to him if you guys want to go to that therapist.
Yeah, she was straight up. She didn't beat around the bush. Wow. And I respected her for that.
She's straightforward.
Right, but I was in the midst of a trauma bond. So I get home, and it actually happens to be her birthday, and we go to dinner, and then we're just kind of spending nice time together. And she's like, so how did therapy go? And what she's doing is she's trying to see where I'm at in my discovery or in my process. She already knows about the credit card question. I said, well, I told her about the credit card, and I told her about these other things, and she thinks that you're having an affair. And then she answers, that's just because I haven't talked to her.
Wow.
And I was like, oh shit. And she was set to leave to Florida that week. She goes to Florida for an actual trade show. Actually, she's been planning this one for a year, but then a regional show after the actual trade show, right? So, and I'm just sitting there with my thoughts. Like, this therapist, mentioned this, and she said, that's because I haven't talked to her. Like, has she been maybe doing this with everybody she's been talking to, including the person that we were seeing together, and putting on this? So I start going, deeper into, like, I gotta know, I gotta find out. I can't be in this constant state. So the next week I go back to the therapist, and I tell her, like, what her response was when I said that. She said, oh wow, she got that out of you, huh? And she said, have you ever heard of narcissistic personality disorder, covert narcissism? And I was like, no, what is that? And then the research starts, and then I realize
there's a rabbit hole,
and then it's like, woof, and then it goes back to the 6-month timeline, and I'm just blown away, and I'm just like, oh my God. So now I'm in a state where I'm just like, I have to dive into the shadows.
So now you're going to go inward, right? At this point, because you've been sitting with...
Inward, external, like, in order, it's this cat and mouse game. And in order to match that energy, you have to do things that you wouldn't normally do.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
kind of emulate or create something similar to that.
So I was able to access her computer, her work computer. And I saw that for every regional show, there was a blank on her calendar. So immediately I thought it was her direct report boss, who's the president of the company. It didn't turn out to be him after all. I apologize to him, because I guess that got back to him somehow. But You know, I was in a really bad state. I was completely dysregulated. I joined Beyond Driven the day that she left the house, and the reason why she left the house is because I had found that she booked an Airbnb in Monterey for the end of that month, which was February. We're at like February 12th, and so I asked her, I was like, hey, do you have any work travel planned this month? And she said, yeah, I have a regional show in Utah at the end of the month. I was like, damn it, you know, this is. So that day I hired a private investigator, but I couldn't contain the secret for the next 18 days or whatever it was. It was driving me crazy. I started, you know, drinking alcohol heavily to suppress these emotions and try to keep it under wraps and just show up. I wanted to show up like cheaters, you know, at the hotel, right? Like, but I had a grand plan to do that and have it on tape, and so there's absolutely no like questioning. God,
that would have been wild.
But I couldn't keep it under wraps, and I was dysregulated, and I in full accountability, I did said horrible things.
Absolutely.
I was every trauma that I had ever experienced in my life,
almost like relived it again,
came to the surface, and I am so ashamed of the way that I acted in front of my child. I'm so sorry, baby. I love you so much. Please forgive me. But I was a fucking mess. I was a fucking mess. And this is 6 months of psychological abuse that I went through. But on the bright side, I knew now. There was no more questioning. There was no more guessing. Beyond Driven was helping me every day just meet with men that are going through similar circumstances. There's a lot of marriages that are messed up that aren't due to narcissistic abuse. It's due to unhealed wounds and traumas. And that's why I joined the program, because I was like, you know, if my marriage has a chance, this is it. And what they do is they make you face your shadow. They make you face your responsibility. That person on the other end has nothing to do with how you are inside and how you show up to your marriage. So if they're not for you and you raise yourself to a higher bar, a higher standard, a higher consciousness, they're going to naturally fall away anyways.
It's going to fall. It's going to dismantle.
Absolutely. So you know,
burn down.
I didn't understand the level of freedom that I would be experiencing from this, and also the level of self-awareness, and also the level of you know, ability to help heal my fellow brother and sister, you know, suffering through these things. But you know, I acted a fool. I did horrible things. I said horrible things.
As we all have done.
I was drinking, you know, and not to make any excuses for any of my behavior. It was completely unacceptable, and you know, I'm truly sorry that it got me there. I was responsible for my emotions, and I failed in a lot of ways. And it'll never happen again, you know, because I am now back in the driver's seat of my destiny, of my spirit. I was so disconnected to spirit, and I just feel it just coursing through my body now. And, you know, my purpose is clear. It's uncertain. You know, I for the first time in my life, I'm
welcome to the club. Uncertainty, trusting the void and the abyss of nothingness, and trusting the universe, right?
Yeah. So she still at this point didn't know that I knew, you know, but I basically said, I know you're having an affair. Please just admit it so that we can move on in a peaceful way, or that we can move forward, and I forgive you, you know, like just still willing to forgive at that point, not knowing exactly the roots of this this disease that she'd been, you know, working through, or not even working through, but, you know, affecting other people, I guess you would say, with her entire life, or herself. They're the most effective. Like they suffer intensely. Like there's no revenge that is needed. There's no karma, etc.
No.
She's
you cleaned your karma by how you're healing yourself and taking ownership of your own feelings, your behaviors, your patterns. Yeah.
For our daughter's sake, I hope that she is able to maintain.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, she moves out of the house that day that I accusing her of what she's doing, because I know, but you know, she wants to still, oh my God, I can't believe you're still bringing up the fact that I'm having an affair, et cetera, et cetera. So she leaves, and that was perfect, because now I had time alone outside of this to really grieve, to really go through what I felt was like what a heroin addict goes through in withdrawal. Like
Absolutely.
I was shaking violently. I was waking up in cold sweats, soaking wet, just crying. I was having suicidal thoughts. And for somebody who's been on this healing path and doing so much work to have suicidal thoughts, I can't imagine what somebody who's not even close to that level of support that I've been given, of just friendships and bonds that I have to go through that kind of pain. Oof. My brother Jaime shows up the following day. He heard in my voice, and he drives 3 hours just to come sit by my side and to hold up a mirror of who I am.
Oof. Powerful.
The following week, I knew that, it was 50-50 that they would show up to that Airbnb with the private investigator. So I was like, hey, I'm going out of town. I'm going into ceremony. I knew that I needed to go into the medicine, and I knew that she would be in the home again. And I planted recording devices, and I got a glimpse into the real self, what she's been protecting for 14 years through her own words. She sent videos to this gentleman. You could tell that he was pulling away because, she was probably very disheveled and just out of sorts because she was no longer in the house. So she was feeling very uncomfortable. So she was trying to reel him back in. So I was like, there's a chance this might not happen. So, and it didn't ultimately. She ended up coming back into the house, and I was like, I got you. It's over, it's you got sloppy. During that time, I also found, receipts and, all of the things that, she had been sort of keeping under wraps.
And with that being said, what's the most, what's the word I'm trying to find that you can give advice to the audience when you're in that situation? I mean, what was your feeling at this point? How to reel it in for yourself emotionally?
Get help.
What tools and what direction?
So definitely get therapy, intensive therapy. For somebody that has been doing this work, to go through such a heavy process to deal with the psychological aspect of it, you got to get your mind right. You got to heal your wounds. There's no other way than to go inside of yourself and sit with the fucking struggles that you went through as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, to sit with your part and your role in everything that you've attracted into your life energetically. Connect to a higher power, connect to a community. When I went into the medicine that week, the medicine showed me all of the depths of the treachery and the shadow, and I had to go and I had to absorb and I had to feel the grossness of it. I had to purge it. I had to get rid of all of the shit that I've been carrying this whole fucking marriage that I've been suppressing. But it also showed me that I was called to the medicine years ahead of time because this was happening. I didn't feel it intuitively because I was suppressing it, but in that process, I was building this house brick by brick with every brother and sister that I brought into this medicine life, that when that storm was coming over the hill, I had a nice, soft, cozy place to go and lay down by the fire. And I was held so tight in that circle next to my mom and her ashes. And I was loved. And I was just loved by the medicine and loved by my community.
Yes.
And this is why I do this.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your heart, for being vulnerable in this space.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for providing this platform. It's I'm just excited for what's to come. I'm excited to go to the jungle and further my studies into this medicine, into this healing path. With the original holders of this sacred medicine who kept this tradition alive for over 6,000 years. Despite all of the challenges that they faced, the fact that we get this beautiful medicine to touch our lips and heal our souls in such a profound way, for the collective. I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful for all of my mentors. I'm really grateful for all the people who took an interest in me. I'm really grateful for all the people who believed me when I was going through this process. For the community that held me, for my closest friends, my brothers, thank you. My sisters, thank you. For all of the people that are following their hearts. I've helped a lot of people while I was going through this dark night of the soul, the struggle. Like, I'm still helping people work their way through their processes. So thank you for believing in me. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for following that intuition that you know, I have the collective's best interests at heart at all times.
Absolutely. You heal, and you heal your brothers. You know, as I heal my sisters.
Yeah.
We're just one piece of that. We're weaving this together.
Yeah, and we heal each other, right?
Yes, I agree. And how beautiful that is, that you're able to see the light even through that process, right?
Yeah.
Even through the process. So thank you to all the amazing people that come in our roles in our and our families too, that came to that role to be in this experience for us, so we can be who we are in this present time and who we're becoming, you know, remembering who we are.
Yeah.
You know.
And, you know, share your truth, share your light, you know, by you sharing your story and not holding back on things that might be uncomfortable.
To be guilty and shame is one of the things the ayahuasca, you know, Madre showed me, like, the whole world, the whole collective, you know, that's what holds us back. It's the shame and the guilt.
Right.
To really share our truth and our light, you know, and no one is perfect. No one is perfect. No. And being vulnerable is opening yourself to that space of transformation and becoming a new self, a new version of yourself each time. You know, you're shedding, rebirth. It's amazing. Yes. Yeah.
And you know,
the acceptance of that.
I've allowed the parts of the old version of myself to have a beautiful death. You know, it's been quite an awakening, and I'm looking forward to just furthering this beautiful metamorphosis from a cocoon to a butterfly, and you know, helping others, you know, achieve that in themselves. But it ain't easy. It's not a path that, you know,
you need community, you need family, chosen soul family.
I didn't have a traditional family. I had a very untraditional family. I didn't have a family at all, really. The gift that God gave me when you know, she told me that everything is going to be okay was the ability to attract the greatest souls on earth. I really feel and believe that what we're doing is creating just waves of positivity, and ultimately, you know, across the nation, across the world, you know, we all need to come together, and these spiritual communities, all with the same common purpose, to change this shift and create this new beautiful reality. And I think it's happening. We're coming to a head, and you know.
And I think that's the big thing, right? Like, people who suffer of obviously there's so many levels of narcissistic things, you know, and again, that's like for each individual to look into it, you know, personal research and educate yourself, and having a mindful mind regarding that, and be in that awareness, because it's also creating boundaries for ourselves. Be able to, when you're becoming more and more of a better version, a higher self, you learn to respect yourself. You learn to put boundaries, and that's a form of protection of your energy.
Yes. Because
you're learning now finally to love yourself.
Yes.
With self-respect of your essence.
Yeah.
Of your essence. So
there's basic things that you should never sacrifice. And you know, loving yourself.
Self-betrayal.
Yeah, loving yourself is the most important tool above all else, and how you get there is a personal path, and sometimes it has quite a few bumps, and sometimes you think that you've made it, and you're not even fucking close.
Enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the ride.
You know, because it's everything is like, again, we said in the beginning, it's an opportunity to grow, learn more about ourselves, and as through that transitions that we go through, death and rebirth, we're also healing our ancestors. We're healing our descendants, you know, and I've said it in the past, we are the new ancestors for our future new earth, which is us. You know, we're ending the war with us, you know, and making peace with ourselves, connecting with ourselves, and learning how we become more and more and more divine in the experience and in this experience of a human life.
Yeah.
So honor. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
Anything else that you would like to share?
Yeah. One final thing, you know, if you have people in your life that you feel are going through something and you feel it energetically, or you know what they're going through, you know, just continually check in. I had so many people checking in on me, you know, so many to name, you know, Peter Purpose, you know, thank you, my brother, long time, just beautiful soul, always just checking in and just trying to get me to do things outside of my comfort zone, which I love him for. Larry Terry, one of my longest friends of the world. You know, there's just so many guys. I'm really sorry, but I love each and every single one of you. Jason Palomino, thank you so much for all of your love and support throughout the years. You know, a lot of these people have seen me go through all of these phases that I've spoken with you about, but you know, finally getting to a place where it's all sort of making sense, and that I was given this purposefully because I could handle it. I got big shoulders, and I got a big fucking purpose. And it's an opportunity for tremendous growth.
Absolutely. And the fact is that your soul, right? It's I'm a believer that we choose sometimes our experiences so we can grow in this lifetime. I do believe on many lifetimes, and so maybe in this lifetime we get in a stronger challenge than we could remember another lifetime. With ayahuasca, she has showed me other lifetimes, and
gracias, mama.
You know, and this lifetime I have to learn again, you know, that I don't have to be attached to the externals, to the experiences, you know, be able to embrace the uncertainty with acceptance, and that gives us freedom.
You are not your story.
Yes, you're not your story. Thank you so much, Shane. Thank you for being vulnerable in this space. Thank you, John, for being here with us in the back.
Brother John.
Hey, John.
Thank you,
Thank you to all the ones that being a part of Shane's life and in this most recent experience. And that in this episode, anybody who gets in to hear it, the audience, that you get medicine out of both of us, and most first of all, like Shane, thank you again, because this medicine is so potent in a sense of like
we are the medicine.
Yes,
our lived experiences, you know, the medicine only goes so far. It's the work, and that's what I was shown too, you know, like, and that also, you know, was sort of used against me in a way, but I take it as a compliment. You know, the number of journeys that I've done doesn't matter. The amount of integration that I do on a daily basis is none of anybody's business. But I'm a living example of the work and the struggle and the dark and the light. And you know, shadow work is important. You're not going to find growth in the light. You're going to find it, you know, in the depths of your being, which you know, requires you facing a lot of fucking pain and you know, do the work.
Discomfort in so many levels. And yes, Shane, you are tú eres la medicina. We are the medicine.
That's right.
So honor. Thank you again. Share this episode. And again, this episode is personally for Shane. It's healing for him and his own reality. And you know, appreciate for your transparency of your experience and your healing yourself through this process. Thank you for taking ownership for the collective.
Absolutely.
Because that's the only way we can heal.
Radical accountability, radical acceptance. Accept. That was a hard one for me to accept it.
It takes almost every day to say that. Accept
and follow the emptiness. Stay in that centered space of awareness, consciousness. Find your way back there through breath, through meditation. However you got to get there. Get out of your head. Get into your heart.
That's all your healing methods that you've used through this process. And thank you. And so with that being said, we're done.
It's a wrap.
Yeah, it's a wrap. So if anybody wants to reach out to Shane, please reach out. I will post his Instagram. Is that okay?
Absolutely. It's Shane _David_Street on Instagram. I'm actually going to sign up for Facebook again. I've been off for like 13 years or something.
And he has super exciting news. He's going to the jungle. We support him in any way. We're here to be in service for you as well.
Yeah, please follow Coda Healing.
In Coda Healing,
absolutely.
Yes, this is amazing.
It's a new venture.
This is a beautiful ceremonial place that we come and heal.
Yeah,
and share medicine together.
This is something that's very important. Creating a structure, not just ceremonies and medicine, but also integration, being of service, teaching people how to do the shadow work, not just telling them what that is. Breath work, meditation, yoga, all of the modalities.
Go for a run. Move your energy.
Exactly. Diet, working out. There's everything is medicine. Remember, it's our temple, it's our mind and our spirit, and
what you listen, what you hear. Yeah. So stay inward. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Keep hydrating during this hot season. Today is a hot day, so thank you that you guys were holding us here. John, thank you. So thank you guys again for following us. Love you guys. Namaste. Keep drinking your water.
That's a wrap.
Hey, my loves. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Karla After Dark. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Share them. Follow the link below. I am looking forward to you joining me on my next episode. Thank you for your love. Namaste.